L'chaim to the Rebbe, l'chaim to us all. Some Farbrengen you need to give all kinds of hagdomas and introductions. I'll just get straight to the point because we're dealing here with advanced veterans that are the obvious. I always take the approach that you have to always ask the provocative question right at the outset, and that is.
That's a provocative question. You can never take a penny now from them.
Excuse me?
Done that. You can never take a penny from them now.
And why didn't you ask last year whether the first prize winner paid herself?
Shaw won something, no?
Just got it. What the hell?
I have no money to pay my
It wasn't a year ago, that was a couple of years ago.
We're getting everything provocative off the table.
Anyway, so the most provocative question of all
That was provocative, no?
is to ask, why did you not win?
Huh?
If you would have submitted, and then you wouldn't have won. I have no money to pay him up.
So we have a past winner who says did not pay his way to the prize.
There's no chance that I paid him up because I have no money.
If you would have, what's the point of paying? We're paying the winner, not they're paying us.
Father pays the kids to win.
Provocative is a word with many wide range of uses, right?
But if anybody's been following, know that it was all judged blindly, so no one knew who's judging what.
Yeah, but Saul.
Not having a successful.
So Putin says about his elections. It's all blind. Nobody knows, right?
Make women a real scene.
Okay, listen, I understand where you develop cynicism from, but I hope you find something in life that you take seriously.
Like his collar.
So the provocative question I was going to ask was this: why are we sitting here in the first place? And since we're talking about culture, the fact of the matter is, in my research and studies over my lifetime, I came to observe that most people, and this is not just within Chabad, but in every community, Jew, non-Jew, religious, not religious, literally everywhere, most people are basically shaped and defined by their cultures. Which means you grow up in a home, your parents decide what schools you're going to go to, and they decide what attitudes and customs and traditions you're going to follow. By the time you're old enough even to ask questions, most of your life has been shaped for you. You've already gone through your school years, your formative years, and it's extremely difficult psychologically to break away from things that you grew up with. The reason some people do is either because it was very, very unhealthy and they were desperate and they just got out, from a burning fire, or for other reasons. There are all kinds of different studies why people would break away, because one of the hardest things for a person is to abandon and to basically reject what they grew up with. Because it's the nature of a human being. You want to be accepted, you want to be loved, you want to be part of a community and culture. So there's a beauty to it, of course, because there's an element of family and nurturing and building confidence and security. But there's also a big downside in every culture, and that is, it's more or less based on conformity. Based on conformity and based on just following robotically and mechanically that which others are doing. And every community, every culture has its rules. Some of them are spoken rules, and most of them are unspoken rules. And basically, if you break the rule, every community has its way of punishing you. Again, intentionally or unintentionally. Everyone, there's what they call excommunication, can be in many subtle ways. It doesn't always mean that you get a cherem and you're kicked out of the community. It could be subtle ways that you crossed the line and you broke you went against the establishment. There's always a consequence of that. And you see this in school, you see it in children's lives, wherever you turn. So I don't know if you've ever thought about these things. I obviously have, that's why I'm talking about it. And it was actually very disturbing to me as I grew up in this community, because even though on one hand I saw a lot of the beauty, and frankly I have to always be completely transparent, I was not abused, I wasn't molested, and I wasn't disappointed or lost faith in somebody or someone. Or on something, because the truth is, I was always a skeptic. So, you can only get disappointed in something that you have expectations from. I didn't trust it in the first place. You don't get disappointed. You want to close the door there, maybe?
Mandy. Mandy.
So I say it, I'm not saying it just to be provocative, to be very honest. I'm saying it really because I think it's vital to talk about. Because if you have thought about this question, it can be a very, very disturbing one, even because you say to yourself, you know what? How much of my life has been chosen for me, and how much am I going to choose? And our destinies, are they like all written out for us? And remember, keep in mind, there's a lot of ways that a culture will control you. It begins, obviously, in our early years. You're told what to do. You can't ask a child, what do you want? You can't tell the child, here are 10 options. Parents will choose for the child. I'm not even saying that's a bad thing. What school to go to? The early years, you sit at a Pesach table. All of us have ingrained in us from our youngest age, as the Fir Kashas and all the excitement, Pesach, everything about it, the childish stuff, the beautiful things. That's, if you want culture, Pesach is like the epitome of culture. Because every detail and everyone remembers how your mothers and grandmothers cooked and cleaned and again a lot of beautiful memories as well. But that's a real cultural thing. And as again, I want to make it clear that this has a lot of mileage. When there's a culture that's strong, you usually will perpetuate it. Like most of you are probably married and you have children. You're going to do what was done to you. Basically, you'll pass on to your children. And we have psukim for it. Shal avicha v'yagetcha, shal zkenecha. We have a way, and the whole Pesach Seder is all about the Gad Levincha, and we pass on the tradition. Again, beautiful. But how do we avoid this trap of culture where, end up being, you start asking yourself a question, how independent are we really? And as I said, every culture has its way of keeping people in line. And one of the biggest ways, I wouldn't say the biggest, but one of the ways is at some point, you need to make a living. We need to make a living, we all will compromise things because you need to pay bills. And you usually will. That's one of the biggest places where every culture will control you, because it will give you the options, and there'll be consequences if you don't fit in. People won't give you a job, or they won't support. And this can be parents to children, and it could be also community, and so on. Now, there have been studies written. Many books have been written about the power of culture. So nothing unique. It's not unique to Crown Heights. Not unique to Chabad. As I told you, from the beginning of time, every culture, every community has had to deal with this. So the real question is, are we trapped in this type of approach and saying, okay, you know what? For the benefit of the cause and the benefit of the movement, this is what you do. And you have to give up on your independent spirit and your free inquiry and open-minded thinking, because al tifresh bin hatzibur is the rule. Don't break the rules, stick with it, and it'll keep you together, keep your family together. You start wandering too much with your mind, you can get into trouble. You start exploring or experimenting, it usually does not lead necessarily to great places. Everybody has to have a measure of conformity. But the fact of the matter is, and I don't know how you're wired, but some of us are wired in ways that they cannot accept that as a given, that they're going to be for the rest of their lives somewhat, I want to call it a slave, but more or less a product of their culture, and what's expected of you is to make sure you continue it on. And we're even taught Kabbalah Sale. And on the other hand, we find that the Chassidus and the encouragement that we ask questions, and then the real question is this: if we are like that in this community, so what really does distinguish Chabad and Chassidus from Gera and Bobiv, and for that matter, Lahavdil, from Muslims and Christians? Every culture has its rules. So I know the knee-jerk reaction is going to be, we have the emes, right? They don't. But they also think they have the emes. And their culture also has the same rules and requirements. And I'm not denying, everybody feels they have the emes. And so if you're a thinking person, you start saying, okay, fine, either you feel superior and arrogant and condescending because we think we have the emes, and we have all the expressions. And I know the language. I came from this community. I come from this community. So I do know the mode of thinking. But if you really challenge, you say, okay, 1 second. So how do we talk and know? And what makes us different? Do you really feel like that Chassidim in 770 and Crown Heights are really nonconformists, as opposed to, let's say, Eden in Borough Park or Geula in Israel or other religious places. So I know, of course, we throw in today's the Rebbe's birthday, we have a Rebbe. Our Rebbe is different than all the other Rebbes. Okay, that may be true, even if you were able to explain that the Rebbe is completely on a different level than any other, and of course I believe that myself, but that doesn't mean the community is different. It just means we have a great Rebbe. How did it rub off on us? If we're just the same conformists, except this is the system. So you get the drift where I'm going here. And I feel the need to talk about it because, first of all, every Farbrengen is somewhat of group therapy, so it's a way of venting a little. And why not? Since I have here the microphone, or whatever you call this. And most importantly, I do think, however, asking such questions to me is not, as some people would consider it to be sacrilegious, you know the word, and irreverent, and like a chutzpah, and like somewhat of heresy, kfirah. I think asking such questions actually force us to really think about ourselves and what our role is as human beings, and as Eden, and as Chassidim, as Chassidic Chabad, and especially Chassidim of the Rebbe, since today's Yud Aleph Nissan. Farbrengen Yud Aleph Nissan were usually tonight, Mitzvah Yud Aleph Nissan. So asking these questions, from my point of view, is like Shalas Chacham Chetz Tshuva. That if you ask the right questions, often you come to a better approach to life than if you don't. Because if you don't, it may be more comfortable and it maybe make you less uneasy, but it doesn't necessarily lead to to growth. Good questions, and very often when people look for things in life, and you can imagine a lot of people come speak with me and they consult and so on, and very often they want answers. The truth is, what you learn to do is help people find the question, not the answers. Most people don't know what the question is. Everyone thinks they know the question, the only thing that's missing is the answer. It's not true. Most people do not know what the question is. Like what the question is that you have to figure out, what is it that you're looking for? And that itself is a big chachman. And if you find the question, you're already halfway to the answer. So asking questions, in my point of view, is the key to everything. As a matter of fact, if you want to, that's alpi svara. If you want svara lamali, but I'll have a kra also in svara lamali, is basically we're coming to this Friday night. We're going to have the seder, the first of Tuesday, and we all know the fear kashas. So a few years ago at the Pesach table, the Seder table, so I was here, now I go to a program, but I was a number of years did a Seder here, and I used to invite a lot of people to my house. And so one year I had a Psalm and my kids and all the kids were asking the 4 questions. I said to myself, let me ask a 5th question. And I posed the question to the table. The question was that when you read the Haggadah from beginning to end, you don't find answers to 50% of the Fir Kashas. We have an answer to why we eat matzah. It's clearly matzah zu. And we say a whole piska on that. We have an answer why we eat mother. We say in the Haggadah both. But there's no answer why matbilin and why we... right, correct. Nowhere in the Haggadah you're going to find an answer to those questions. Not even beremes. So my question I asked at the table was, what kind of chacham is this? You're encouraging children to ask questions, and then you never even answer half of them. What's the point? So one chacham said at the table, he says, by the time we end the Haggadah, the children are asleep, so they don't even realize that we didn't answer the questions. You could always tell them tomorrow, we did answer.
Answer the question, we'll answer the next one.
Oh, very good. See, you're an intelligent guy. That was my response. Brilliant, mamish. So, what's going to happen is the children next year, or as they get older, they'll say, interesting, okay, so there was no answer. So that's a ridiculous response. The Rebbe once said by Farbrengen, I remember in the early memes, I think it was, the Rebbe said that, I remember he was saying, I think Botnim, or Tenenholz, no, I'd say Shittim, Tenenholz is the way they say it, the Pasuk we say, Tenenholz. So the Rebbe said, what's it, Tenenholz? So he asked his Melamed, the Rebbe said, the Melamed said that was älter werden, was to verstehen. When you get older, you'll understand. So the Rebbe said, ich bin älter geworden, und ich verstehe noch alles nicht. Die einzige Sache, was ich verstehe, als mein Melamed hat nicht gewusst, der Rebbe. So that's what the Rebbe said. So it doesn't help. So what is the point? Here's a thought. And you can discuss it. You'll say at the table, maybe come up with a better answer. What is the greatest freedom of all? Pesach is Cheres Semer. What is the greatest freedom of all? So, people say freedom. Okay, I have no shibut. I'm not meshubit to anything. But we are meshubit to many things in life. Good, we're not meshubit true to another nation like we were in Mitzrayim. And we're not slaves. But as I said before, every culture has a certain shibut. And so what's the greatest freedom of all? So sometimes you have to look at our enemy, and the enemy can help you discover our strengths, because the enemy always seems to know where your strengths are. That's where they attack. So from enemies, and especially in war, strategic studies of war, they say sometimes you look at the enemy to know what your own strengths are, because the enemy has a sense. So one of the things that you see in the regimes, in history, totalitarian regimes, and empires, and monarchs, fascists, dictators, what was the first thing they did when they come to power? They shut down the right to ask questions. They shut down, they control the airwaves, television and radio, or in the early generations, information. Because they don't want people to have information. They want to control information. It's called propaganda. The Nazis did it, the communists did it, even the United States does it to some extent. But especially a nation like that, because it's a threat to have anyone that's going to ask a question. You want control. And mind control means you have to control the flow of information. And questions are considered to be a merida b'malchus, a mutiny. Which is essentially why the communists, what they have so much against the Jews. And Marx wrote that religion is the opiate of the masses, because they saw it as a threat, a loyalty to something else than their own country. And that's what they do. They establish right away a Bureau of Truth and Information. Look, study. What did the Nazis do when they came to power? Propaganda, Goebbels. He was a master of propaganda. And they could never have pulled off what they did with the Eden Rahman al-Islam had they didn't spend 10 years or 5 years kept on pushing the message in the newspapers and in cartoons that the Jews are literally like insects and bacteria. That's what propaganda. They control information. I remember when the Soviet Union, before it fell in 1990. So I remember my shver was in Russia, and it was like tough times still. And they came back with an English newspaper. In Russia, they gave out an English newspaper. I remember Russia, there was no access. There was obviously no internet, but there was no newspapers that came from outside. One of the things they did have, Radio Free Europe, if you ever heard of that. Radio they couldn't control because people would broadcast from Europe. It was called Radio Free Europe, and it was actually what helped the revolution to overthrow communism, because they heard radio. But without that, they almost controlled that millions and millions of people simply had no option. They didn't know, and they thought the Soviet Union is the best type of life. Ad kedei kach, and I kid you not, I remember my shver brought back an English newspaper. It was a small, I forgot what it was called. It was like a tabloid, And the cover story, there was a picture of a ghost town with like a faded light, and said, the last few people of New York have now moved out of New York City. That's what they said. And the whole article, how New York City has been abandoned, and it's now filled with animals, and it's a crime and all that. Now, how could they disagree? No one knew better. This was what they fed. I read it. I remember a picture. It looked like a ghost town. You would never know. It says, last few people in New York have moved out of the city. This is what they fed. This is what's called propaganda. In the good old Soviet Union, they also had a Yiddish newspaper. The communists, the Yiddish communists, you know what the newspaper was called? MS. Pravda, the English paper in Russian, you know what Pravda means? MS. Now, would you trust a newspaper that's called The Truth? Imagine a newspaper. You want to subscribe to The Truth. Anyone that says that they have the truth, you know is trouble. Now, interestingly, the Yiddish newspaper, MS, you know how it was spelled? Ayin Mem Ayin Samach. Ayin Mem Ayin Samach. So I always thought a theory that maybe the guy that was the editor-in-chief, it was a way of hinting to Jews that there's nothing MS about this, so he misspelled the name and no one would know except the Jew. Because Ayin Mem Ayin Samach sounds so Jewish, but it's Aleph Mem Sof. No, but you don't write Ayin Mem Ayin Samach. Even in Yiddish, you don't. No, of course not. Anyway, the point is control of information and not allowed to ask questions. So here's my thought. That's why, by the Fir Kashas, what do? We encourage the children to ask questions. It's not even about the answer. They will get the answer. Avoid the Me'inu and this answer. So it's not so important in the Haggadah whether you have the answer to all the questions. The bottom line is you're right to ask. And if Shailas Chochem, as I said, Chesed Tshuva. You ask the right questions, you're a free person. That means you can challenge what your parents tell you, and you can challenge what your community tells you, you can challenge what your culture tells you. Obviously, we're talking about a healthy challenge. I have to point this out. There are healthy skeptics and there are unhealthy skeptics. An unhealthy skeptic is someone who asks questions only to find excuses. There's some people you could argue with all the time. They're not looking for an answer. They're looking for excuses. So they give you this thing, and then you give them a response, and they give you another teretz. At some point, I remember when I was younger, I thought you could argue with people. Then I realized it's ridiculous. Some people don't want to, they're going to go nowhere. Whatever you say, they'll come back with something else, whether it makes sense or not, and because they're not looking for an answer. Then there's healthy skepticism. Healthy skepticism means you really sincerely want to know an answer. Right now you may have questions, and you say yes. So sometimes in a discussion you could sense, or you could ask somebody you really want to know, even if something may not be so comfortable for you, or maybe not the way your preconceived notion. So that's what's called real freedom, the ability to ask questions. That's why I said, we don't know, and there are questions I said, come lahachis, or lakanter, or something like that. I'm not discussing those type of questions. So what I posed before was not meant to be just to be provocative and just to be critical. It's meant really to dig deeper and think and understand, are we really bound by our culture? So let me tell you my short answer, and tell you why I'm speaking about, of course, Yud Aleph and Nissan. I had this question when I was a teenager, and I don't know if I had the sophistication to be able to articulate it like I do today, but I definitely had the question because I used to think about it. And I used to here and there try to ask questions. I remember once I was in the Shir, we were in Ocean Parkway. I learned in Bedford and Dean, then in Ocean Parkway. So I was in 9, 10, 11, 11th grade. That was called like the third class Shir Mesifta. I don't know what it is today. They have an equivalent? Okay. And I'm not going to say his name. He's still around. And I asked him a question, which maybe I was trying to make trouble, but honestly, I did have the question. I remember we were learning Gemara, Masechta Gitno, I forgot what Masechta, and I don't know, something was bothering me, so I raised my hand and I said, I don't understand something. We learn the Gemara here, and Gemara in general, and we fine pick, what is it called? What's the word? Nitpick. Splitting every hair and every scenario and possibility. So that's what you hire lawyers for. When you buy a house or you sign a contract, you have a lawyer that goes through all the fine print and let them review it and see, why do we need to be sitting here and breaking our heads over every possible scenario? 90% of them never happen. You ever read a contract? Most of the things will never happen. But you have to bavar and everything. So I said, why do we need to sit all day sitting and breaking? Our teacher got up, came over to me and gave me a slap across the face. Peirik Eil, von dir wird man sehen nur Tzoros. That's what he said. From you, we're going to see only Tzoros. Maybe he was right. And I wasn't traumatized actually because, firstly, it wasn't an ongoing thing that happened. It happened. No, I did not need to go to therapy. I didn't consider it a form of abuse.
But you remember it 50 years later.
Yeah, because I remember it. I also remember sitting at a seder with when I was a kid, maybe 9 years old. My grandfather, my mother's a Lipsker, so we were sitting in the Lipskers in President Street, my grandparents. So we would always go there for Pesach, the grandparents, And my uncles were one more frum than the next. They were like crazy extremists. Don't ask. Everyone had their own plate and their own fork all over the place. Everyone was hiding in different shafas. I had like a little taiva and I did it. I used to mix them up and then they didn't realize even. So I guess I was machshel them in Nechvezvos. They were crazy, I'm telling you. Don't worry, it didn't have any impact on me. Not nishtazeh. I'm sitting up by the Seder. We come to, I guess, whatever, one of the cases, or maybe matzah. And it's time to mesubim, right? We're supposed to lean. So I lean, I don't know. My uncle says to me, "You're not leaning enough." So I say, "How much do you have to lean?" Like, what's the share of leaning exactly? So he says to me, "You're not leaning enough." So I say, "Why do you have to lean?" He says, "Chedus, derech chedus." And he starts banging me in my head. "Chedus, lean more." Chedus, bang in the head. That was also I remember vividly. Again, I wasn't traumatized. I didn't need therapy. I actually found it quite humorous, but I'll never forget it. I recently told him, I said, all the years I didn't realize why you did it, but now, because I have great material for my speeches, about my uncle used to hit me in the head and tell me, "You got to be free, you got to be free. We'll chain you until you're free." The blood v'tzirgisna b'shalom v'zayin. That's what they used to say, yeah? So he was knocking me in my head. So I realized, okay, today I laugh at it because I realized this is the culture, a culture that's devoid of any thinking. It's like brainless, like a machine that's programmed, this is the way, this and this and this. And you ask a question right away, you get another bang. Now, as I said, I was not really, maybe I made my trouble in yeshiva and so on, but I wasn't really abused by the system. I was like, whatever. But today I think about it, I could articulate it, and I'll tell you the truth, but I came to my own way, without going into the whole story of it. The Rebbe, of course, played a key role, because in those days, the Rebbe for me was king on the hill. It was all the good days. We're talking about I was bar mitzvah in 1970. So you can imagine I was here in the good old days, the Rebbe in the full glory. But the Rebbe was still a distant figure, meaning he was here, and I respected the Rebbe, obviously the Rebbe, but I didn't have a relationship, I could say, I looked to the Rebbe for the perfect model, and all the other people are full of it, that. I didn't even have that. I had nothing about the Rebbe that was disturbing to me, but I can't say I had a relationship. But I did look for it. I said to myself, 1 second, for almost 4,000 years, Jews have been going through this type of conformity. Every uncle was hitting his nephew and telling him he got to lean. No way that smart Jews would have maintained this tradition. That's what always bugged me. Because when I was looking around, I saw a lot of mediocrity and I saw a lot of conformity. But I couldn't accept. It sounded strange to me that this has been going on for 33 years. No way. I could see a lot of people being conformists, but I could see a lot of people saying this is ridiculous. This is like mind control. This is just a program. So I was looking, and then I used to read a lot, and I still read, but I read all kinds of stuff, and I had many different machshavas zoros. Not the sort you're thinking of. More important point of view, I was reading different philosophies and Buddhist stuff and Greek stuff. And I realized that every system is going to have these questions because every system has its culture. So it's not a point of, I'm going to find another culture that's better than this. So I wasn't like looking for an alternative, but I did study alternatives because I wanted to know what's going on out there. And the long story short, what happened to me was basically I came to realize that even though, yes, a big part of the community that I grew up in and that you grew up in is definitely cultural driven and very much programmed, but it doesn't mean you have to be. That's an individual choice. And just because many people do that doesn't mean you also have to go along with that. I wouldn't tell somebody who wants to be part of the program, you have to break it. It's not my job. Everybody has to make their choices. But for me, I know I could not accept it. And ultimately, it was really Chassidus that did it for me, because I realized, as opposed to Gemara, which I did see like the fine print in contracts, I understand it was divine. It's not like a mortgage contract, but still, the details of it. It was Chassidus that really, for me, was like the music of it. And then, when I began to appreciate it, I began to appreciate the Rebbe to some extent, on my level. Which meant I suddenly saw that, yes, that Avraham Avinu was a pioneer and was not a conformist. And Moshe Rabbeinu was a non-conformist, and they all paid heavy prices for being non-conformists. Avram was rejected. He rejected his family and his community, and he was the ultimate non-conformist. He literally went against the whole pagan world, and he suffered for it. And Moshe was a non-conformist. He was anti-establishment. The establishment, even the Ziknei Yisrael, did not trust him, and he was constantly being challenged. And then I realized that the Rebbe too, the same thing, and every leader has the same. They have a certain element that they are rebellious, they're revolutionaries, but it's dressed in the so-called Hasidic and traditional garb. And that's when it touched me. Then I realized that, no, Judaism is here, not because there were a bunch of conformists. It was because there were a few non-conformists. But yet, community has to be built, and not everybody's going to be a leader, and not everybody's going to be a pioneer, because by definition that is the minority. But what Chassidus has to offer is that you could be a pioneer. And then I started thinking to myself, okay, what about in other cultures? Are there pioneers there too? So the truth is there are in every community. You'll find people who are like leaders. But, in my opinion at least, my subjective opinion, with Chassidus you have a much more chance to be a true pioneer than without it. So for example, in the Litvish world, the reward you get for so-called, the ultimate success, you become a Rosh Yeshiva. Das Teira. That's a very deliberate reward that they give. In Chabad, it's to become a shliach, or other things that become influential in that type of fashion. And even though you could make comparisons, because everybody has so-called the reward they get, but you're a very noisy individual, huh?
Some
people have
cake. So what I wanted to say, and that's my opening remarks regarding the Rebbe. I believe, and I'm going to share obviously some more details, I really sincerely believe this without even doubt in my mind, that when you understand what Chassidus is and what the Rebbe is, it can allow you to discover your voice. That is the nonconformist voice in you, that you can actually be someone unique, not just another clone of your parents or of your friends or of other people. Now again, I'm not going to say that you can't find another community, but we're here. There's no reason to go look elsewhere if you can find it here. If you couldn't find it here, and this is a cult that's only one, but completely negates and doesn't allow for self-expression, then that's one thing. And trust me, I've talked to Bochrim, I've talked to young women who have this challenge, and they say they can't find their voice here. So, I try your best. I try to explain to them how you could. But I'm from believer that you could, and when you do, it changes your life. So yes, I'm not going to deny the fact that I, just like you, grew up here, wherever you grew up, but you grew up in a very tight-knit community, very strong rules. From our youngest age, we are definitely trained, the same way Da'ani and Barachis, and all the things from the youngest of age where once it becomes ingrained in you, it's very difficult. Like for me, I forget about that. I couldn't even eat basar v'chalav if I wanted to. I'm repulsed by the concept. I always think to myself, why am I repulsed? Because of some type of kedusha? No, baba mais. Because the culture, at some point that you're trained, that milk and meat, it's like ridiculous. So the Rambam says, it used to say, afshi, but what can I do? The Eibusher doesn't want. But for us, many of us, some things we just won't do because we're repulsed by it. Now, halavai, we could say that about all Avedas. That's not the case. There are certain Avedas that I guess, with all the training, that doesn't change the human nature. But I will say this, that even though there is a culture, but it happens to be that with Chassidus and understanding what a Rebbe is it can free you instead of enslave you. And I should add that even the Rebbe himself, there are people who look at the Rebbe as the leader of the cult. And I'm not saying that necessarily in a bad way. They see the Rebbe as the one that you must follow, Kabbalah Sale, and you don't break that rule. And therefore they treat the Rebbe in that way, that the Rebbe is that type of, the dominant so-called leader personality in this culture. And then there are those, when they learn Chassidus and understand what a Rebbe really is, realize it's not that at all. The Rebbe is a godly person and is driven by bittul, not the cult leader that many people have. So, just a few weeks ago, there was a journalist came to speak to me, and he said, I wasn't, a smart guy doing his research. He says, I spoke to many people here in this community. I said, what did you conclude? He said, most people, this is a cult following, and the Rebbe is the cult leader, and that's why they have a problem with after Gimel Tammuz, because the cult leader is not here. So they either have to create an illusion that he is here or other things. He had a very interesting analysis. So I said, did you meet anyone that doesn't see it that way? He says, yeah, there are a few, and that do see it a more sophisticated way. And yeah, he's not going. I don't know if he's going to write the article or not write the article, but I assume that's what he's going to write. That the majority. So I told him, so this is not different than anywhere else. So you're going to find in every community people who are conformists, and they have a certain narrow way of looking at it. And there are people who see it in a much more broader perspective. But it was interesting to me that he picked it up very quickly because he's a student of sociology, so he knows how societies work, and he sees the similarity. Now I know for many people in this community, they hear that say, He's a menagid, he's a misnagid, he must be hates Chabad, because he doesn't seem to appreciate. But what he's pointing out is a common thing. Anyone with a little intelligence can see it. But the main thing that I wanted him to understand, and he did pick it up, I said, but go to the best people in Chabad, the ones that do get it, and I'd like you to compare them to the best in other communities. And he said 100% right. In a society, every society has a spectrum of the top, the cream of the crop, and you have people who are, let's call shev memecha chetev etzecha. But the question is, when you really want to measure, you measure everything. You have to measure the top of both societies. And that, he told me clearly, there's no question that there's a certain openness and a certain confidence that you find in the Chabad community that you will not find elsewhere. But it's a minority. So the question really is, what I want to suggest here is, sitting here, you're Aleph, Nissan, Farbrengen, is how you connect to the Rebbe in a deeper way than just as I guess, I don't want to use the word called personality, but as just this personality figure, which frankly, I think today is even more challenging, because I don't know if any of you have ever saw the Rebbe. Anybody here saw the Rebbe?
I think we all did.
Remember?
Yeah,
Okay, the last stage. So today, the question is even stronger by people like yourselves, or let's take younger than you, who never even saw the Rebbe. Like I remember, and I had the question I did on Sunday night, Chassidus applied last summer in Gimel Tammuz. So a guy, I don't know who wrote to me, it was anonymous, someone writes to me, why my parents insisting that I miss a Rebbe that I never knew? To me, the Rebbe is like Baal Shem Tov or Moshe Rabbeinu. I never knew them in the first place. Why do I have to miss him? And he continues writing that when he told his mother this, his mother started crying. How did we fail? How did we not teach you to miss the Rebbe? And he said, he told his mother, I don't understand. You didn't fail. I never saw the Rebbe. How could you miss something you never saw? So it's a very good question. So I asked this a lot of people. They say to me, okay, we have to teach them how to miss the Rebbe. I say, so what are you going to do exactly? How are you going to teach someone to miss something that they never knew in the first place? So the answer is really that if you're going to look at the Rebbe as a person, a human being, and you never saw this human being. So what's the difference between the Rebbe, the Frierdiker Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe, the Baal Shem Tov, the Harizal and Rashbi, and so on. But if you look at the Rebbe as something more than just a person, and represents a cause, and represents a movement, and represents a hashkafa, and that hashkafa is appealing, that's something a person can say, okay, that's something I want to be connected with. And when I'm not connected, I feel like I'm lacking something. So that's what I want to focus on. But I wanted to give my cultural introduction to the whole thing. So stay tuned. L'chaim, we'll sing a niggin, and I shall continue. So I posed the question. But remember, with the Meir Nevuchim, they used to say the problem with Meir Nevuchim is that you fall asleep with the question and never get the answer.
You're doing a -9 over here.
The other two, yeah, exactly. L'chaim, my friends. Chassidim, l'chaim. We'll sing a little nigga with Havamais Bisli Shashvus, then we go further. Also, I want to make sure I don't overextend your attention span in this Facebook age. Right?
This is the point. Isn't questioning only healthy from a certain age?
I think every age questions is good, but look for Yerech, the child. Look, the fear kashas, we encourage our children from the youngest age. Obviously, a 5-year-old's not going to ask questions about conformity.
Isn't there about the first get down pat and then you can ask questions. Let's get that void, let's get Yishkai down.
Fine. So how do you explain then the fear kashas Pesach? What's the contradiction? I don't know. To me, questions is not a stira to Kabbalah sale. The same Eibishter that told you to be Makabbalah said ask questions.
Doesn't explicitly say that Kabbalah isn't part of this Kabbalah saying that you don't ask questions to begin with. Do what you have to do, and then once you have that solid thing, then you expand out. Extend out.
That is true.
Nasa v'nishma.
You weren't feeling well. You haven't had anything.
I didn't say that you shouldn't do a mitzvah until you understand. Do the mitzvah at Kabbalah, but then right away you have to try to understand. Nasa v'nishma. Nishma didn't happen 50 years after Nasa. It happened right away. Nasa v'nishma.
But do the mitzvahs long enough and a strong enough way that you question.
So you tell me what. So what's your formula? Tell me how many years do you have to do, and then when can you ask? At what age? You ever heard such a thing?
There's no answer to that, but your questioning can never take away from your.
Well, I just said that, but the doing fulfilling mitzvahs cannot take away from the question either. Both Nasa and Nish.
Mendy Simpson, but he's next to
So the question back the other way around is: how can you know your question is not going to take away from doing mitzvahs?
What's he got to do?
How can you know your question is not going to take away?
Relax.
Because if it's coming from a healthy place.
It's not cut this way.
Most people.
The same Eibishter that said you should do also said you should ask. So that's also part of Kabbalah Sal.
Wow, sounds like the Trump White House. What?
No.
Well, at this table, with me here at least, there's no script. You can ask whatever you
No,
want to
I'm
ask.
saying.
It's not true.
Mashkana is like telling you to ask questions.
Yeah,
These
no.
are questions that you should ask. And
No,
I think
no.
you should ask the same
But if you look in all the Mefarshim, it's not correct. That's the way the culture does it. The whole point of Manashtan is really to sit all night and talk about. It's a structure they gave, but if you really do Manashtana properly, it should lead to many other questions.
Michelle said you're.
So it says everywhere. It's not so it's like anything. It's like davening. Davening has words you say, but it doesn't mean that you can't add kavanah and understand the deeper meaning. It's like music. Someone say, "Is this conformity sitting by a piano or an instrument and playing the musical notes? Why do I have to play these musical notes, not other notes? Because these notes bring out the music. Then play it with your voice." Everyone knows they need a structure. No one's denying structure. The question is, there's only a structure, the same structure. That's the point. You want me to continue, or you want to sing a nig? What do you want to do?
Where's that going?
So until Leila Shvi, everyone's
If
conformist.
you're interested, if not,
Until Leila Shvi, in the Friedrich of Chassidim, they didn't.
I think every.
They had skepticism.
One second,
Leila is non-conformity. They have their own voice. They're working on their own.
Wait, one second.
That's what I miss.
I think I just said. I think
Through skepticism.
I think from the beginning of time, starting from Avram Avinu, there was always this conflict.
Why would I?
And I think that real Siddim, the real ones, saw both.
I think it's a result of people. If you're not going to have any other opinions, doesn't mean anything. Then you're worried. You feel like you're just conforming. Someone that davened or worked on himself, that was he bothered by the conformity? He was
I think any intelligent person is going to be bothered.
So it's not conforming.
I didn't say anything unique to our generation. What I said is every generation.
Right. I just think that it bothers us and our
I can't
generation more than someone that's not doing this.
Someone. Why? Who says it's bothering more this generation than previous? I think every generation, intelligent people were bothered by this. I could show you Chazal that talk about this issue. When Hill says "Emein nili, atzmi mo'ani," I think that's the dilemma too.
I don't know what Chassidus like.
But no, you ask. I think any intelligent person is always going to ask this question: the conformity versus the individual voice, individuality.
You know, Zevi doesn't conform. He's still left in the other
I think until you find how special you are now as an individual, what kind of specialty does someone have being conforming to what the community offers or what they do with their life? I think that's the bigger question. Until someone finds what they're.
Well, I can tell you right now, there's no question. I don't know you guys, but I can tell you right now, there's no question that some of you will be conformists. That'll be a primary way of functioning. Your modus operandi, as they say.
Why is
And I'm not saying it's a bad thing.
It's
I'm not saying it's a bad.
Why is it good to be a pioneer? Why is it good to be?
I just said, for those that don't think it's good to be a pioneer, I wouldn't try to change. No, I didn't say why. Nothing. Don't.
It's not good.
I didn't say that. It's good.
I'm asking you, why is it good to be?
I think
those that have a pioneering spirit will never ask such a question. You can imagine.
Okay.
So now I told you I think every community.
That's almost like when you get older, you'll get a lot of M&Ms.
No. Maybe it's not for you. That's all I'm saying.
But okay, so that doesn't mean I can't understand why it would be for someone else.
Look, you know what? Let me put it this way. It
doesn't mean I don't want to understand why it can't be for someone else.
In school,
Free democracy, trade union should be encouraged.
in an educational.
Lies.
But let people think differently.
Lies.
Lies. Why create
It's
fake
alternative opinion. It's alternative facts.
Yeah.
In every educational.
Lies.
Depends who's pushing the way.
In every educational system, let's just use a classroom model. case study. Usually a class, an average class in school has 3 types of students. You have the best students, the best minds, you have the weakest, and you have the most are the average. Okay? Now how do they work differently? How do they function differently? Here's how it works. The best minds and probably the most creative are probably the most restless, and they could be the biggest troublemakers because they're not conformists, and usually they get bored quickly because classrooms and teachers, even good teachers, are always looking to find the common denominator in a class. If you have a class of 20 students, you can't focus only on the best, and you can't focus on the
best, and the worst and the middle got always ignored.
I think it's the opposite. Most teachers, there are exceptions. Most teachers focus on the middle because it's the largest group, and the weak fall behind, and the best get bored. Now, it's not a rule. Of course, there's differences, and the reason is because many schools don't have the resources to really address everybody. So in every group, you're going to find the majority are going to be I'm not going to say pure conformists, because there's no such thing as pure conformists. Even a conformist has times that they're not exactly conforming. But they're more or less go with the flow. They're the people who never go with the flow, and they're mamish, rebellious, and very restless. And then there are people, like I said, on the weaker side. Now, of course, along the spectrum, you have many different types. You know, it's a guy I used to learn with on Skype every week. He was in Brussels, and he told me that he went to one of the private schools in Europe, prestigious private school in France. It's very known and wealthy. Went there. It was a whole hush of it. It was a secular school. He says one day, he says, we were in class, we were kids, and news came that from a very famous family, a student was coming, but everyone knew this student because he was thrown out of every school. He was a real troublemaker. And he was coming to their school, so they were all excited because they finally have a guy who's going to make some trouble in class. You know, and people always if I'm not going to make the trouble, at least let someone else, and I'll laugh along. You know, some of us do that. So, okay, good. He came, he was in his class. It was the first day of school, or the first day this guy came to school. He's sitting in the class, and everyone's waiting for the trouble. And the student, this student that everyone was notorious, was sitting quietly, listening. Just 5 minutes before the class ended, before the bell rang, the student, this famous rebellious student, raises his hand. I remember this guy Richard told this to me. Says to me, he raises his hand, and the teacher says yes. So he says, I'd just like to share. I've been sitting now almost an hour listening to you, and I have to tell you that you're a terrible teacher. You know, very calmly, he's talking to him like he's the adult, and you're a terrible teacher. But not all is lost. If you come tonight to my house, I'll teach you how to be a better teacher. So you can imagine he was thrown out of school immediately, just from that alone. You know, first day, this was his thing. So Richard, my friend, tells me, it was years ago. I decided, you know what, I'm going to look him up. I want to know what happened with him, because now we're talking about 25 years later. He says either he's a big criminal somewhere, or he's some major genius, you know, major disruptor. And he looked him up. I forgot the name. I have it written down somewhere. Yeah, he found him. He's the creator. He's the director of strategic initiatives at the New York Library. He was a European, but he was in the New York Library. A strange name. And when you look at his bio, and I looked it up, it says a man that always has a way of looking at things a different way, contrarian. And and they hire him to come to bring in a fresh air, to have a new look. So he came and created a New York Library. You know, New York Library on 42nd and 5th?
Yeah.
No. If you really want to know where it is, it's across the street from Chabad of Midtown. So, the post office is near Madison Square Garden. The post office and the New York Library is a little different. They're both cultural institutions, it's true. That's what you meant, I understand. Penn Station, yeah. Anyway, so That's what it says there, that he's a man that comes and looks at things and looks at it in a different way. So here, Mamish, you see what it says in the Gemara even, about someone born in Mazel Madim, is he going to be a murderer, or is he going to be a sheikhet? He's going to shed blood. The question was going to be for good or for bad. So there are people like that. They're unique. They're not common. They're very quite uncommon. But there's nevertheless there's in between. There are people who are more or less do have within them the ability to disrupt and the ability to look at things in a new way, and they're not really by nature conformists. Then there are people, I've met many people, who have that, but they conformed anyway because it was easier, like you said. It was more comfortable. There was too much pressure for them to try to be themselves. And then you have people who by nature don't need to go out of the mold. I know people like that. Let's talk from a Yiddish point of view. I know people that I respect deeply. They wake up every day for the last 30, 40 years, 6 a.m. or 5:30 a.m. on the clock, and go to the mikveh, and learn chassidus, and daven, and like a clock. And it may be robotic in a way, but it's beautiful because they're good people, loyal to the cause. I'm going to have your attention or not? Or are you all distracted? Huh? Loyal to the cause, loyal to their families, make parnasa, and they don't have a need to go out of this. Now, if they happen to be Chassidish and dedicated Yiras Shamayim, I would never go tell a person like that, where's your pioneering spirit? Why do you wake up 5:30? Why don't you wake up sometimes a little 5:45?
Pioneering spirit today.
And why don't you do something unique that nobody's done before? Because there are people that this works for them, and they happen to be healthy and good. I'll tell you where the problem becomes. If a person like that is following clockwork and doing everything, but beneath the scenes the guy's a lowlife and cheats on his wife and does all the things, but the Chutzenius, the biggest mahadir, comes to Pesach. That's a guy full of BS. So his conformity is just a front. It's not even a healthy person. So I would not suggest that healthy conformity that's connected to a healthy person is necessarily a bad thing. And that's why you have to identify yourself and really know what you're made of.
Is cheating with your wife limited to sleeping with another woman, or is there other ways to cheat?
No.
Are you married?
No. If he has issues in that area,
is this like a
talking to your wife?
Is this like a Trumpian type of question? What is this? I understand the question exactly.
It's the only way to cheat.
I see you jumped on a certain line, huh? That was not what I was. That was not my thing.
It's a question I have.
What's your question?
It's the only way to cheat on your wife. You sleep with another woman.
No, it's not the only way. Of course. What's the shayla?
But if you have issues,
interesting question. Okay.
If you have issues in that area, Rabbi, if you have issues in that area, you're being mahadir on Pesach. Why would that? No, I'm saying like.
Why does the conformity and that thing happen to you? The lashing out, or someone's a non-conformist and does that, is any different? Like it makes more sense. You're saying someone's a conformist, but then behind the scene in his own personal life he does other things. Does that have anything to do with the fact that he's a conformist in his regular life? Like if he was a non-conformist, then it makes sense.
Well, a person like that is not living an honest life.
Yeah, that's a whole different.
If you're a non-conformist in everything, then it's honest.
But a person like that should be shaken up and forced to get out of their place because conformity is an excuse. Hides behind it.
But it's definitely something.
I'm talking about the actual
anyway.
Pesach itself.
So,
not the show.
I think the lack of enthusiasm to this point is a demonstration of the fact that you're saying something right.
Listen, I'm still in the middle of discussing it. There's a lot of angles here. By the way, I'm not here
People don't want their conformism shown.
I'm not here to preach any gospel or something. I'm here to share thoughts. Do it as you wish, I personally think that everybody has a unique voice in them. The question is how powerful that voice is, and how much you need to feed it. As I said, there are people.
This has to do with Yad Nissan. So you said this we're leading into Yad Nissan somehow. So let's Bridge the gap.
First of all, I never heard anybody write for me a script, and I'm not gonna.
No, you were busy saying how about that. We're here to listen, but they're gonna give a preface, and we're gonna get to the point. So let's hear it.
Well, if you heard what I said,
I have to drive home.
My question is
driving, man.
If you believe in the movie,
Mandy, you can't drive.
all this shtick, but you have a certain weakness.
Mandy?
let's take questions afterwards. Let me share a few thoughts, and we'll take questions after.
You can't drive, man. You already too much.
Splitting the days.
You can't drive. At this point already, you can't drive.
Okay, so what I said was like this.
Yeah, my parents was like that.
Okay.
Saying we're not here. We're not all here out of a spirit of nonconformity. We're here for the Aleph Nissan. We're for a reason. We're here because of sitting on the Rebbe.
You're saying if it was Stam a mitzvah, you wouldn't be Farbrengen?
No, if it was Stam a mitzvah and we were talking about nonconformity, I'd be fine with it.
Right.
But we're here because we're chassidim.
If it was Stam a mitzvah,
but I think that's the whole. That's the difficulty, right? Like, how do you find a place for nonconformity?
Who needs to find a place for nonconformity?
And designation for every single thing. Right? It's the balance of independence within the whole structure.
That's exactly the point. Exactly right. So I said before that there are people who have different attitudes to the Rebbe. I would say anyone that is culture-based Jew, which basically in the language of Torah is mitzvah sanoshim u'lamada, called being a mechanical Jew, a conformist, will have a relation with the Rebbe in a conformist fashion too. The Rebbe is like the so-called figurehead that represents this culture called Chabad culture, Chabad establishment, Chabad bureaucracy. For those that understand a deeper aspect to Yiddishkeit and Chassidus, and the Rabbeim in general, the Rebbe in particular, will have a very different approach to the Rebbe, almost like a different Rebbe. Because the first Rebbe that I just described is the Gerech Rebbe have the Gerech Chassidim have their Rebbe, the Belzer have their. Everyone has their culture, they have their customs, the way they dress, and you have a picture of the Lubavitch Rebbe hanging on your wall. They have a picture of their Rebbe hanging on the wall. You sing Chabad Nigunim, they sing Belzer Nigunim. You have Minhagi Chabad by the Seder, they have Gerech Minhagim by the Seder. But if you understand Yiddishkeit in general, starting with Avram Avinu, Echad HaYavram, and Moshe, and going all the way to the Rabbeim, and our Rebbe, whose birthday is today, yes, in a way that I was describing that is a lot deeper than just another culture, but it actually came to make a change in this world, and we didn't just come here to copy other people and be clones, then you'll see the Rebbe in a very different type of Rebbe. Then the Rebbe is a pioneer, a leader that came to make a mark that's different than was before him. It's not just another community leader who happens to live in Crown Heights. That's why everything I said is exactly, absolutely negay. The truth is, I said it already earlier. So, how you see the Rebbe, I'm not sure, and each of us have to look in our own hearts. But I'll share with you a few thoughts on this matter, which I hope can help us all, including myself, connect in a deeper way. Let me start with a fascinating Farbrengen. Tov Shemem Hei, Yud Aleph Nissan. Yud Aleph Nissan, Tov Shemem Hei, was a big Farbrengen. It was the year that Rebbe turned 83. And there was a big crowd in 770. It was also a televised Farbrengen. So it was a very big public Farbrengen, in 1985. I remember like today, the first Sikha, which was on television. So the Rebbe spoke on television. It was always it was the same Rebbe, obviously, but he spoke in a very global way and very you could tell it was a different type of approach, style. But surprisingly, huh? What?
Like a mashpia being recorded.
The Rebbe?
Like a mashpia being recorded.
No, on the contrary, he knew his audience. He was talking to a much more global audience. The Rebbe spoke a lot about Hashem Mitzvah Bnei Neach, about things that were negated to the Welt, because he was speaking there. And the Rebbe started the Farbrengen, started a Sikha, and it was like shocking almost. The Rebbe asked a question. He says, Klotz Kasha. Anyone who learns Chassidus knows that Reish is Goyim Amolek. the worst of all klippas is amole gaiva. Gaiva. Yeshus and gaiva is considered the worst of all. Because when you have yeshus and gaiva, it leads to everything else. So Vikumt, as the Rebbe says, that Eden, that we get together, thousands of people come to hear one person speak. One person is Yom Haledes. Everybody could be sitting home and learning and davening on their own. To come, so to speak, and honor one person seems to be Heipach Kol Ha'Yin for Chassidus, which is about Bittel and not Yeshus and Gaiv. That's how the Rebbe is speaking in a televised Farbrengen. I remember thinking, couldn't believe it that the Rebbe was even saying that. But that's what he asked. And the Rebbe answered with a story. He told the story that there was once in a town, they were looking for a new Rav. It was a very choshev town, so they needed to find a choshev Rav. So they interviewed this one, that one. Finally found a guy who was a Talmud Chacham and a sensitive leader, an intelligent man. Everyone had a hadras, and had a chen to him. And everybody felt he's the right guy. But there was one problem. He was physically, the Rebbe said, that even at kurzer, he was physically short. Gashmi, supposed to be a short person. But still, his qualities were so great that they decided he'll become the Rav. But there were still people in the community that felt somewhat embarrassed. So they went over to him and they said to him, the Rebbe tells the story, if I bring in Yud Aleph Nissan Mem Hey. It's recorded, you can see it, listen to it, it's a video probably. So they said to the Rav, we respect you and everything is nice, but it's not for the Kehillah, for the Chosh, for the covered HaKehillah. You're going to get up to speak. It doesn't uncover you. You're a short man. So the Rebbe said that, I think the Rebbe smiled and he said that he answered, der Mensch is klein, aber the Benkel is grace. The person is small, but the Benkel, the seat he sits in, that he occupies is big. So the Rebbe continued, he said that this is not honoring one person's birthday, it's honoring the Tnuah called Chabad. And this person was Zeiche to represent that. So it's not honoring an individual, you're honoring Chabad. That was I'm just giving you the summary of it. What was so amazing, this was not Tafshin Yud Aleph, where the Rebbe just became Rebbe, Tafshin Yud Aleph, and everything was the Frierdiker Rebbe, and the Rebbe was basically like the steward who was making sure that things continue. All the Rabbeim in the first years of their Nesias were always very tentative. Literally, you hear the Rebbe Rashab, look in the Maimorim, Tofresh Mem Gimel, his early years, he's always writing, V'im Shagisi, Hashem Yechaper, if I make a mistake, always writing, B'derech Efsher. Famous story that after the Rebbe Marash was nostalgic with Gimel Tishrei, so the Rebbe Rashab, of course, became Rebbe. Didn't accept it for 10 years, but he was right. So he was traveling. The Rebbe Rashab would travel for health reasons in the winters to Europe, to the south of France, Germany, south of France. Doctor said he should be in warm regions and near water. So he went, but the Rebbe Rashab insisted on traveling anonymously. No one should know who he was. He would always dress up very regular. As a matter of fact, later years when he traveled with the Frierdiker Rebbe writes in his Shimis, Yaman. Interesting, he says, sometimes I went with my father and they gave me an aliyah because my father wanted to be anonymous. Frierdiker Rebbe says, you can imagine me being called up to the Torah, what I felt like, my father sitting there and they're calling me to the Torah. So Rebbe Rashab was he came to the city, he came to Shul on Shabbos or whenever it was. They said, Vanakum Ta'id. So he said, from Lubavitch. So they said, Lubavitch, Meherden as Sedar Naya Rebbe, Lubavitch. A younger man, remember the Rebbe Rashab was 23 years old. 22 years old. He was born Tofresh Chafal, Tofresh Mem Gimel. 22 years old. Is a younger man, of Mehed, is a Grace Yerushamayim, Agvaldik Gon. They gave all the qualities. And they're asking this man from Lubavitch, who's the Rebbe Rashab, if it's true. If it's true. So his answer was, aber kommt zum Taten. You can't compare him to his father. No, he didn't say no, he didn't say yes, but he said you can't compare him to his father. So all the Rabbeim in the early years always spoke in this way. But this was not Tofshin Yud Aleph, this was Tofshin Mem Hey. This was literally only 7 years before the Bi Chav Zayin Adar. And the Rebbe spoke in this, and I remember I was taken by it because the Rebbe was not saying words just to say words. You're taking a televised Farbrengen the most public display, not privately and not to Chassidim, to everybody, and it's recorded for, and literally speaking in that type of bittul dik way, that's an example of a person who's not a conformist. Why? Because it's not about him. In a cult, or in any cultural leadership, and I'm talking about not even an unhealthy cult, a healthy cult. Community. You need a leader. Every tribe has a leader. A group leader. There, the focus is on a charismatic person who has a strong personality. People respond to him. They feel empowered by him. So it's not his bittul, it's his mitzias that really takes people. It's charisma. Here the Rebbe was literally I would say not belittling, but just share another sikha that was 2 years earlier. Purim Mem Gimel. Not the same words, but listen to this theme. I remember this also very vividly. It's also a weekday Farbrengen. You can listen to it. The Rebbe says, "From side to side, werden seder ashayla asofik. Zimetut richtig." Everybody understands Yiddish, or should I translate?
I don't understand.
Which way is it? Yes or no?
Yes. Yiddish is good.
Okay. So the Rebbe said, and he was talking about himself, that from side to side, you have a suffix whether you're doing the right thing. And the Rebbe, the same suffix that he said 2 years later. In different nations, he didn't use the same word. The Rebbe said the suffix is, he didn't say it right away in the Sikha. In Meshach of the Sikha, you could see that the suffix. What's the suffix? That why should people come together and hear one person speak Torah when everybody can go in their own home, in their own yeshiva, their own shul, and learn on their own? Why are they all coming here? So the Rebbe said, again, I'm paraphrasing, not word for word. The Rebbe said like this, that where do you get, what's the answer to the question? He says, you go to the Rebbe if you want an answer to the question. So he said, there's a story of the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe was once standing at home. His wife was there with him, the Rebbetzin. And he saw out the window, he saw Chassidim coming. So they were coming to him, they wanted to hear Torah from the Alter Rebbe. So Alter Rebbe said to the Rebbetzin, to himself, to the Rebbetzin, he says, "Was willen sie von mir? What do they want from me?" And he was about to close the curtains and lock the door, not let them go in. This is the Rebbe's words. He says, "The Rebbetzin gizen amedavdo apeston zal zayin a gute sof." Should be a happy ending here, in other words. So the Rebbetzin said to the Alter Rebbe these words. They kommen hern was Ayer Rebbe hat zu sagen. He didn't say they're coming to hear you because you're such a gon. They want to hear what your Rebbe has to say. So the Alter Rebbe answered, Eba zei will ich sagen und sagen. This is the Rebbe told in the Farbrengen. If that's the case, I'll say and say. And they came in, and the Rebbe, Alter Rebbe gave a whole Torah on Kisove, a whole thing. So the Rebbe continued, this is the Rebbe's words now. The Rebbe is saying, the Alter Rebbe did that was mitzad anova, his humility. Heint yode inush benafshe, medafresh tom da anova. It's not mitzad anova because people know where they hold, and the Rebbe was talking about himself. This was his anova. The Rebbe just Agav said there, the Zelba Alter Rebbe was said kalemish geschrieben as Tanya is mi pisofrim and pisofrim. Now, if you look at the Shabbat and Tanya, you can convince yourself, you know what, it's a little compilation. Alter Rebbe went, he compiled a few thoughts, and it's Tanya. Anyone knows Tanya, it's a chidushim from beginning to end, but Alter Rebbe is mi pisofrim and pisofrim. The Rebbe said kalemish. Same Alter Rebbe that wrote that, like, as if Tanya is some type of, like, collection. So he said, today we don't need Anova, but since Ashgacha Pratis, this and this person was Zeicha to have heard the Frierdiker Rebbe, and was Zeicha to prepare materials for publication. He's talking about himself. That's why people come, and that's the suffix. That's why there's a Farbrengen that he allows people to come. What you see from both stories is something completely different than you would ever imagine. If the Rebbe is a CEO of the company called Chabad, or is a charismatic leader of this culture, tribe, then everybody has the big question. And I remember years ago, I've repeated this many times, I remember a New York Times journalist asked me, how is it possible that the CEO is not here and the company continues to run? There's no company in the world that can be that way. Show me a company, CEO disappears for a week, the company will fail. And here's years and years. So how's that possible? So I said, because he's not a CEO. So I said, what is he then? How do you identify him? It's interesting because that's the only model that people have. CEO, a chairman, a president, someone at the wheel. A captain of the ship. The captain is not there. How is the ship running? Everyone has this question. So everybody has their answers. The answer is very straightforward. The Rebbe is a Moshe Rabbeinu. He's a Ish Elikim, and he's not his power over his community. Even when the Rebbe was here, Begashmis and Shom Beguf, was not due to his charisma. He had charisma, and many people were drawn by the charisma. I'm not taking away that he was also a cultural leader for many, but the real driving force was that he was the Benkel is grace, nicht the Mensch, that he was representing something greater than any individual. And those touched by that doesn't die. That does not change. That does not change. A CEO dies, or the CEO resigns, and you get a new CEO. But a person who touches people when they're young and in their hearts and touches them with a vision and a pioneering vision, any pioneering person, that will never, no matter what, even the one that inspired you is physically not there, it will not die. And that's what you have. The Rebbe empowered people to own their decisions. The Rebbe didn't hire anybody and said, I'll pay your salary. As a matter of fact, in the early years when the first shluchim went out, they asked the Rebbe, when they buy a building or something, how should they legally structure their mejdus? So everyone thought the Rebbe would answer, make sure this is what every company does. IBM, Microsoft, Google, there's no such thing as you have your own little company. You have to have in your charter or in your bylaws that you are part of the central headquarters, and there's veto power. Rabbi Chadikov or the Rebbe or somebody in Merkis is on your board that if you want to buy a building, you need them to agree. If you want to spend anything over a certain amount, you need them to be part of it. And the Rebbe said, Atzmoy, the Rebbe wrote and said, independent. So technically, every Chabad house is independent legally and financially. There's no one can control them from a financial legal point of view. So you say, so what controls them? What controls them is their commitment to the Ruchnisdike vision of the Rebbe. Nobody can. So you look at any Mason, look at it. Look who's on the board, and you'll see. So the allegiance came, in a way, not because we're hired guns, because people were empowered and they knew they're going somewhere and they're never going to leave their post. And every shliach feels exactly that. He feels he owns what he has built. And that autonomy is almost impossible to find anywhere. There's no company on earth that would ever allow that, because how do you have quality control? And what happens if somebody decides they want to go on their own? What do you do? So we could talk about that in detail. But that's how it's structured. And that lasts. That you don't need the CEO to stand there to watch over you, because it's not a legal relationship. It's not a financial one. What is it? I'll tell you what it is. It's based on bittul, and it's based on emes. On emes. The Rebbe's emes touched people, and emes never dies. That's the bottom line. Now you'll say, what a second? There are a lot of people that are conformists and culture. They have a problem. I don't know what they do. I don't know how they handle. If someone sees the Rebbe as a tribal leader or cultural leader, what do they do now? So they have to either convince themselves that the Rebbe is here, or they have to say the Rebbe is not here, and I'm lost, and I cry all day over that. But anyone that has the emes of the Rebbe, the emes doesn't change, the kavanah does not change, the hashkafa does not change. So I would say there's like two Chabads. There's corporate Chabad and there's hashkafas Chabad. Corporate Chabad sees it like a brand. You have to perpetuate the brand, which, frankly, the Alter Rebbe said that the Chabad is not a maflega, it's not a party. Like it was Moshe Rabbeinu exactly a party. What did Moshe Rabbeinu leave? He left Hatera and he left Talmidim. That's it. He didn't leave property and he didn't leave money. He left a mandate, an approach that he received from the Eibishter. And that's the Rebbe, exactly like that. And there's an emes to that. Does some people still take the Rebbe and turn him into a cultural leader? Absolutely. If it works for them, gesundheit. I mean, I don't know if gesundheit or not, but I don't know. What doesn't work for me? Because then that's why I was sharing the stories with the from Purim Mem Gimel and Al Nissan Mem Hey. There was a guy who wrote to the Rebbe a letter. The Rebbe gave him an answer. Listen to this. I don't know if you ever heard the story. And he didn't like the answer. You know, Why he wrote to the Rebbe, I don't know. But he didn't like the answer. So he wrote back to the Rebbe, like arguing. I don't know if arguing, but he was like explaining to the Rebbe more details that the Rebbe get
his
this.
individuality.
Well, yeah, I guess so. No, I think he was expressing his inability to see it a different way than himself. When you write to the Rebbe, you're hoping to get it. You write to the Rebbe because you expect the Rebbe is going to give you an insight that you don't have. That's the way I would put it. Al Kaponim, so he writes back to the Rebbe, trying to explain to the Rebbe that, as if saying that if you knew this detail, that detail, the answer would be different. You know, the Rebbe wrote back. The Rebbe didn't answer him. The Rebbe wrote, Rei Rashi Dvorim Aleph Tes. You can look it up if you like. What does it say there? That's what the Rebbe wrote. You hear? I heard the story. I was wondering why this guy was zeichet to get such a good answer, but he got it. He got this answer. Yeah.
You figure someone that would not find the first answer sufficient wouldn't be the kind of person to get that kind of response.
Well, you know what? The Rebbe maybe just lost patience with him and said to him, "Listen, you're writing to me. Why are you writing to me? You think I'm just another guy that you're going to explain to me? I told you what I told you. I don't know what he did at that. I do know somebody I personally know wanted to change jobs, and he was doing certain work. And he wanted to go into contracting. So he wrote to the Rebbe once, twice, three, the Rebbe did not answer. Now this guy happened to have a connection with the Rebbetzin. So he asked the Rebbetzin, he decides he's going to use his connection. He says to the Rebbetzin, he's been writing to the Rebbe about changing the job. The Rebbe's not answering. Maybe the Rebbetzin could ask. She said, I can't promise you, but ich will sein reden mit dem Mann. The Rebbetzin would always call the Rebbe man. The next day, the Rebbetzin called him and said, and my husband said, the Rebbetzin said, they should tell him that if he listens to what I answer him, I'll answer him. Yeah. The guy, I know the guy, told me the story. I know who it is. So he said to the Rebbe, what's the shayla? What do you think? I wrote to the Rebbe, of course I'll listen. She says, Azay de man gesagt, if he says it, think about it. Maybe you shouldn't write. Maybe you don't want to hear certain things. Maybe basically the Rebbe sensed in his letter that he's looking for a particular answer, and the Rebbe didn't want to be machshel him, so he didn't answer. So he thought about it, and he told me, he said he wrote back to the Rebbe, asking Mechili and saying that that's true, maybe he did have leaning, but the Rebbe, whatever the Rebbe answers, he accepts with Leif Shalom that he's going to do. The Rebbe told him not to do. The Rebbe answered, the Rebbe told him not to go into contract. And he says, even then I had an assignment not to listen. He listened, he did listen.
Is that on Lipsker?
I don't know, you could ask him. I don't usually say names unless they say it themselves. It's called confidentiality. Why, you heard such a story from him?
Yeah.
Okay, so then maybe. I heard the story from somebody. Maybe it happened more than once. So what's the point? The point is, it all comes down to, here, I'll give you another story that I taught in Beis Sufka years ago, and 12th graders, and there were two 12th graders who came to me. They both were invited to go to the seminary in Melbourne, Australia. I may have told the story.
You said it last year.
Huh?
You said it here last year.
Okay, so you know the story.
Don't remember.
So I'll tell it anyway. Fine.
Some people weren't here too.
Okay. It's a very good story because this is exactly. So they showed me that. So they both wrote to the Rebbe, and one of them got an answer to go b'simcha b'tuv levov, v'abrach b'shotev mitzlachas, and everything. The other one got an answer. She should go ask her parents. So they asked me if I can explain to them why they're both same offer, same classmates, they're friends. Why would they get such different answers? Is it Api Kabbalah? Does the Rebbe see their Gilgulim or their Neshamis? So I realized it's probably not very mystical. So I said to them, do you mind me seeing what you wrote to the Rebbe? So they showed me. So one girl wrote to the Rebbe, I'm excited about this opportunity, going to a place, being Mekayim the Rebbe Shlichus, meeting new people, doing the work, helping out the Shluchim and the Shluchis, etc. With that whole enthusiasm. The other girl wrote to the Rebbe that she has this offer, but it's a different country. She doesn't know if the food is the same. I don't know if it's the same bed. She's not going to be she'll be away from her family. She goes a whole list. Basically, the teddy bears and her blanket are not going to be exactly like they are here in New York. So you can imagine what the Rebbe answered each one. Right? You don't need to be a makubal to know that the first one, the Rebbe answered like an adult. She writes like an adult, got an answer like an adult. To go and should be b'shot tev mitzlachas. The one that wrote like a child, what do you tell a child? You tell a child to go ask her parents. I'm just learning. I give a class every morning in my house in Ayin Beis. So we're learning now about the idea of kamayim aponim leponim. A very fascinating maimer. He says like this. It's actually a maimer based on the Alter Rebbe, Pesach maimer, Shvir Shel Pesach, Tov Kuf Samach Dal. He says something fascinating. The Alter Rebbe. He says that halos man. Chassidus talks about halos man, our initiative, and what in order to get Hamshachas mad. That when you make an initiative, the Eibishter responds. So usually we think of it like this. You reach up, and God sends you blessings. So he says it's not so simple. He says it's kamayim aponim kein leva adam lo. When you look in water, the water is not responding to you like the water is making an effort to respond. You get back the reflection exactly what you put. And there's no shinui in the mayim. He says the same thing is with Hamshachah. It's like I'm giving my own example. It's like bouncing a ball off a wall. The wall is not contributing. The wall is giving you back. You bounce it with more strength, you get back strength. So it reminded me that Tzemach Tzedek, the night of the Stalkus of the Alter Rebbe, so we have a rare document where the Tzemach Tzedek writes a letter. It's printed in the Igris of the Tzemach Tzedek. So the night was, Chav Dalet Tevis was Mitzvah Shabbos. Or Chav Gimel Tevis was Shabbos, and that Mitzvah Shabbos, around an hour after Shabbos, the Alter Rebbe made Havdalah, and then around 10:25 was the Stalkus of the Alter Rebbe in Kfar Piena. Tzemach Tzedek writes in this letter like this, that he was davening Ma'ariv at the Amid, and everyone knew already it was Otot, because the Alter Rebbe was not well. They had to traveling, running away from Napoleon, it took a toll on him. And Tzemach Tzedek, Shabbos, they control themselves, because Shabbos you're not supposed to show any. But Ma'ariv, when he was davening Ma'ariv for the Amid, Tzemach Tzedek started crying, and he was sad. He writes, the Alter Rebbe saw that. So after he finished Ma'ariv, he says that the Alter Rebbe called him over and said to him, very calmly, he said to him that he heard from his Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe heard from the Maggid, that it says, Kedmus Mara Odom, Al Musa Kisei, Mus Mara Odom, that how you show your face, that's how the face is reflected to you. If you show a sad face, you get back a sad face. And if you show a happy face, you'll get back a happy face. Basically, in other words, you control, even though, of course, it was a sad time, but you control your destiny, basically, he's saying. The Alter Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek has a 3-page letter explaining it. It's a fascinating letter. He talks about how machshava changes realities. It doesn't say Trach Gud V'Zayin Gud there, but the idea is there. He talks about actually, that from some Sfarim, the Pardes writes, that if you can't fall asleep, you should think about running water. So he says, why? Because running water is very calming. But you can't fall asleep because calming water, then you get a reflection of what since you're thinking about something calming, it makes calm. It's really a very profound psychological idea. It means no matter what happens to you, it's what your attitude is going to really shape your future, not what happens to you.
This is in the Igris of Tzemach Tzedek?
Yeah. There's two nuschos. You got to read this letter. It's a Gavaldik letter. I use it a lot. I talk about it a lot because Mamish letter. He tells the story, and that Alter Rebbe was then the Alter Rebbe made Havdalah, and then there was the Stalkus. There's more details. I don't remember all the detail, but you can see that Tzemach Tzedek took it very much to heart. It was like this was probably the last thing the Alter Rebbe said. B'chaim chayusei bal medei. He wrote the Nefesh Hashvela. I don't know when, but this was probably the last thing he said. So it's not like, of course, they sat shiva for him, and of course there was sadness. I go back to what I was saying earlier with the Rebbe. It's what you put in, that's what you get back. Now, I can tell you, before Gimel Tammuz, I'm a creature from before Gimel Tammuz. And before Chav Zayin Adar. That's where I grew up, and that's where I was shaped. Then I have to tell you, we had it good. We didn't have to do any effort. What was the big thing? You came Simchas Torah Ta'akofis? It was a Gvaldik party. Even your Nefesh Habamis loved it. The Rebbe dancing there, and the Elam was dancing. It was Gvaldik. And the Rebbe had what to give, it was like, I'm not saying we didn't have Nishanas, there was also, just for the record, there was a Yetzer Hara before Gimel Tammuz too, and before Chav Zayin Adar, and it was a quite nice Yetzer Hara too. So, Taivas were not born in the last 25 years, as you can imagine. Chet Tzadas happened a long time ago. But what we had was easy, relatively, because the Rebbe was very charismatic, let's be honest. And he carried people with his energy. It came to Aleph Nissan, you had to do nothing. You had to show up to Farbrengen. Whether you listened or not listened, that was up to you. But everything was carried. Today, sometimes I have to look at the calendar to know what Yud Beis Tammuz. They didn't have no calendar. The Rebbe was a Farbrengen. And there was Mincha and Ma'ariv, and there was everything you wanted. As Bochrim, the whole, it was action all the time. It was high, what they call high kinetic energy. High acting, on steroids, if you wish. It was lebendig and freilich. But you know how it is when the light is shining, when a bright light is shining, you don't see the cracks in the wall. When the light dims, and Chav Zayin Oder came, and Gimel Tammuz today, I'm not going to say we're on our own, because the Rebbe is definitely here, but Megoli we're on our own, and now you cannot ride on that. So now you see the boys from the men, or the men from the boys. So a lot of people hold on to the culture and to the memories and so on, but how long can you be inspired by that? Now you say many people are. By all means, everyone in their own way. But I say this because I think today, the challenge is you have to connect to them. I can't see how the culture alone can really keep someone, especially someone that's a little free spirit or a little independent thinking. Someone that's a conformist, you can go, any culture is conformity based. I think that can move on. But generation? You see, there are many people that, as I said, I know very fine Chassidish Yidden. They wake up every day, 5 o'clock in the morning or 5:30, like a clock, and they do what they have to do, and they're very good people.
And their kids also?
What is that? That's exactly.
That's the thing.
It's not a guarantee. No, for that individual it may work. I don't know if you can build a system on it. I agree. Because if there's no passion, there's no excitement, how long can it last? Absolutely. Now, as I said, some people... my point I want to make is I don't want to preclude the fact that I know some people that are able. They're able, because today they have that Kabbalah sale, but we have to cover all scenarios. If you want to cover everything, and children is not so simple, because children, you can be as inspired as you want, that doesn't mean your children are going to be inspired. And conformity works maybe for one person, conformity is hard to guarantee for the future, because there's a lot of options today. You have to remember, there's a lot of competition for the attention, really. There's a lot of competition. And not always good, healthy competition. One second, let me just finish my thought, and then you could go take it away with all your thoughts or questions. So today, you have to get to you have to touch a much deeper emes if you're going to be able to hold on to this. It's not enough the cultural stuff or the conformity. It has to be something that your voice is involved. If your voice is not involved, you're either going to have to fake it, and how long can that last, like you said, or you're going to ultimately lose it. And maybe many people have. Now, some people doesn't pass, so they don't talk about it. So they just go through the motions. I know people, they tell me confidentially, where am I going to go? I'm not moving to Borough Park. I'm not becoming Bells. I'm not becoming a Catholic. So they go with the train moves on, so I'm on. Today, you can't rely, as I said, on the Rebbe's energy per se. That's why I'm saying today the Maraponim is even stronger. Because what you put in, that's what you're going to get. As I said, there was a time you didn't have to put in that much. You came, you showed up, by Farbrengen, Simchas Torah, the Rebbe gave enough. It wasn't just your reflection. Today, what you throw is what you're going to get back. There's no way around that. And sadly, some people don't have much to give, so they don't get back much. And those that find a way to initiate, which I feel is like Yesod, should be Yesod of the Rebbe's Nesius, again and again with Shalevis Elam Elel. And not because the Rebbe was preparing us for Gimel Tammuz. Because the Rebbe understood that ultimate empowerment is that you need to feel empowered. What are you going to do on your own? Not when the teacher is there watching you. Would you be able to stand on your own feet? Can you stand on your own feet and maintain the integrity of what you were taught? I'm not talking about being on your own feet where you're completely lost. You can be on your own feet and start your own movement or start your own minhagim. I'm talking about still continue perpetuating it, but through your way. Look, the Rebbe, how many sichos did he speak? Shliach. A shliach is not an eved and not a ben and not a clone. A shliach must be a bar das b'fnei atzmei. That's the din. Meaning he has to be an independent thinking person. Even a son can't be a shliach. And definitely not a servant, and not someone who doesn't have any shaitan. It has to, and not a puppet. It has to be an independent thinking person who, by his own volition and choice, chooses to be the shliach of this Mishaleach. So it's a contradiction right there. He could always be male b'mishlichusei because he's his own mind. You know the story with Aaron Belinitzer? You ever hear the story with Aaron Belinitzer? An unbelievable story. You know what? Say l'chaim. I'll tell the story after the l'chaim. So my point is that's why I began this whole discussion. That has to be something you know, whether you're a pioneer like on the biggest scale, but you have to have something that you must do kav shalei, something from your initiative. L'chaim. So how do you balance individuality and still stay loyal to the cause? That's the shayla. That's the operative question. L'chaim, l'chaim. How are you?
Just having a nigga.
You for Pesach?
Good. Okay.
Huh?
Okay. I think about a lot of these things. But,
good. That's why we're.
I think it's. I mean, listen, I've been thinking about this forever. It's not still. Thank you.
What?
What's up?
Big difference. There's also we live digitally.
Physically,
as opposed to the memes.
Very good.
In the Chanami, there's a lot of changes. There's a lot of differences. I'm talking about the Rebbe now, you know.
I got here last night.
In what way?
I did.
The bathroom and the girl.
I made sure to fly Virgin.
You see it. Where's the ice?
It was really good because the babies behaved well. You know, obviously it's the only factor you can't control for, and that worked out. So, yeah.
If nothing else.
Yeah, he's still slaving away. The way I understand it is that, like, my main thing is feeling that you feel
serious question. I want to know,
a window,
connecting the two,
like with what you do,
cheating on your wife, therefore you have to, like, there's other ways to cheat on your wife. It's not
everything
with
you
someone else, it
can
doesn't
while
make
it's
you a
still
low life. That's
possible.
why I was asking.
You know what I mean?
No, I said for sure there's other
That's
ways.
my grasp with that.
But are you a low life?
Like, if you knew you could do this forever,
cheating on your wife, does
different
that make you a low life?
I don't know when this is ending. I gotta, you know.
No.
What do you think?
You're going for that. You're going for the early return.
It depends what it is.
Cheating McClellan. I mean, what is a low life?
What's not a low life?
You'd rather
It depends on your cheating and what your.
Okay, I'm not going to categorize a low life. You have to define. Listen, a person makes a mistake once is one thing, but if they continuously live in a lying way. So what do you call? What do you tell me? You define a low life. Maybe low life is the word we need to.
The thing that makes you good is the thing that makes you that.
You wait 2 months and you do it, and you don't tell her about it. Does that make you a low life?
Yeah, I do. But
So, and if you told her about it, then you are low life. Which one is it?
I'm not convinced with anyone.
Huh?
Why are you so worried?
No, what I do now is I come home.
I cheated on my wife. That's too hard.
What the
No, I didn't question that.
I get a pill.
It's a legitimate question. Look,
It's a very dad thing.
is there anything wrong with cheating on your wife? Let's start with that.
Actually.
Yeah.
No, I literally.
Not inside. No, not
I
me.
come home a bit earlier.
Inside her.
No, inside. No.
Dinner.
If I know a friend of mine is cheating on my wife,
about every single
not my
thing
business.
in life.
It's not my business.
It's nice to be.
If my friend had a consensual affair
with
with an appropriate age, whatever, that's between him and his wife.
Because you work Shabbos too. I'm saying you work 7. There are a lot of people, like, and especially like today, like the you know, it's the thing.
But my challenge was somebody who's very culturally and whatever Pesach, he's Mahad and everything. But he has his weakness, right? Whatever it is. You brought the example of woman, let's say. So should he throw everything else out the window? Be true to himself?
No.
So how do you? What does he do? Try to control. Obviously, he wants to work on himself. But
Look, it all comes down to if a person wants to try to be a better person. If they're not interested,
Yeah, you plan for this, and then.
then what's the point? I mean, if a person has standards and wants to sees himself as being accountable to something, to the Eibishter, to the Rebbe, whatever, then you talk about that, what the standards are, and how you grow toward that. That's how I see it. I mean, we're all flawed. We all have our mistakes. The question is, do you want to live that way? You just say, okay, I have mistakes, and then that's it. Or do you want to grow to somewhere? That comes down to. That's why I think a conformist is going to probably get into a lot of trouble, because they'll say, you know what? That's who I am. I'm not perfect. I make my mistakes, and I move on. But everything we learn in Chassidus is that you want to grow. You want to become. In business, nobody's satisfied with just making the same amount of money. You want to always grow. So the question is whether Baruch and Yosef feel that way. That's case by case. I can't tell you where you feel or where you feel. You may say, you know what, I'm pretty content.
It's almost like becoming an individual and having your own ideas is like the new style where that's conforming to becoming an individual. It's becoming unique.
You're saying individualism is not fun.
Says doing what everyone's doing. This is what we do. This is how we live.
You play around.
Go to show and shop. Go to the show that has to sing and the show that has to do this, whatever it is.
Look, we're sitting here in Aleph Nissan. Officially, we're sitting here because we are somewhat connected. We feel we want to do what the Rebbe wants us to do. If a person says to me, I'm not interested in that, then there's nothing to talk about. But if you are, then you have to find. No one's expecting you to become a tzaddik gomer overnight. But if you're here, you want to grow a little here. If a person says, I'm not interested in growing, I'm not going to go try to convince them. That's why I said before to you, if somebody says, I'm completely fine, so I say, okay, go to sleep and then wake up tomorrow and go to work. Be a nice person. But if you want to grow, growing comes with effort.
With the baby.
So you have to make a decision.
It's not. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You can't.
See,
travel. It's lack of effort.
I didn't say that's the only option. Maybe there's. So that needs to be. That's why we're Farbrengen. That's what you need to talk about. I don't know. I can't answer that because I don't know. I don't know you guys. I can't speak for you. I could just put on the table what I think are the issues, and then we can figure it out from there. To me, look. I was about to say this. To me, it's a schus to know when you learn Chassidus that your neshama came down to this world for a reason. Why did it come to this world? Does that bother you? It definitely didn't come just to enjoy ourselves and to make a few dollars. Now, if you're bothered by that, if something that I mean bothered in a good way, then you start thinking, okay, what is it that I should be doing that I'm not doing? Now, I know most people, there's an expression they say, most people lead lives of quiet desperation. They just go through day to day, and life takes over, They say life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans. The years go on, you get older, your children grow up, you try to be a good father, good husband. Do your best.
Plus the exercise, Maslow's hierarchy.
Yeah, of course. Give me one of those. Oh, they're frozen? They're all frozen?
Some people...
No, it's going to explode big time, because this one is so full of gas.
The unpredictability.
Face it to your enemy.
So it all depends where you are in life. Some people physiological needs.
Yeah, but we are Chassidim of the Rebbe, and the need to lie, right? Exactly. We were trained not to be enough just to survive, like animals. But again, it all comes down to me. I can't see myself just surviving. I feel like I have to use my keiches. But I know many people that don't have that. It doesn't bother them. And again, I am not here. I don't want to make somebody uncomfortable. Why do people go on shlichus? Because they just want to go on shlichus. They felt the need to fulfill the mission for what the Rebbe wants you to do. Now, I'm not going to tell somebody who didn't go, you're a bad guy. I know many people, beautiful people, and they have good families, by all means. But it all comes down to what are you committed to? You commit to what things you believe in. So I would ask you a question. What do you believe in? Do you have an answer to that? What do you really believe in? What are you ready to fight for? You believe in anything? No, I'm saying that's a very important question.
Right. Yeah, you
Can you hear me say? No. By the way, 99% of what you say, I always thought about.
Good.
I'm saying, but
I'm not saying, by the way, anything that anyone shouldn't think of. I'm not going to say any big.
For example, I'm
lighter than ever.
I'm probably what you described in the mind.
Yeah, I'm enjoying.
Generally speaking. I always had my yeshiva was always my doing my own thing.
It's the center of town is very small. Everything is.
Pass me one of the seltzers. Okay, you get it open, you forget about it.
But I've learned a lot.
Be very careful because it's very, very.
So, for example, I don't like. I don't think I've delved deeply into topics like you have, but I've heard a lot of their biggest. So, like, when it comes to, I don't know if there's the one thing that I have been, I am a conformist. Is when it comes to that. Why do you think that is?
The peak, right? There's nothing past it.
Oh, we got it. I told you. How'd you pull that off? It's all over you.
Why do you think that is?
Jersey, Russia, maybe.
What happened? No, I told you, Be'er Mayim Chaim has the highest rate of bubbles per capita.
There's for sure a law somewhere, a level of like intensity or
I'm thinking the Gadish with all the margarine to get things down their system. They need to become Be'er Mayim Chaim.
With regards to what you're talking about, this conformity, right? Don't you feel that this system itself, including the Rebbe in some sort of at least implicit way, endorses this kind of ideological approach that doesn't allow for individualism to...
I spoke about it at length before you came here. I think that, no, I don't agree with that. I think that there is in the system room for all types of people. But like I said with the mirror, what you put in, I think there's also plenty... No.
But the cultural ideology, which is more important.
Okay, so my view is for the pioneering spirits among us.
Yeah, but you do recognize that the system routinely, so to speak, punishes pioneering spirits.
I spoke this at length for an hour before you, half hour. Well, if you're a real pioneer, you figure it out how to not be punished.
Or you become disenchanted.
Or no. Or you become a leader in your own right and you're not dependent on other people's approval.
No, but I believe that the system...
Well, since you asked me a rhetorical question or you asked me my opinion?
You're saying, do I just want to talk or do I want to listen?
No, you're entitled to your opinion. But if you're asking me my opinion, or you just want
well, it's obviously
make your case.
Somewhat my opinion, but I respect yours more than mine.
I feel it's up to us. I think we have the choice. You could, what I elaborated before was, you could buy into the culture and be punished by it and ultimately conform. But there are people that...
I think it's the ideology itself. It's the Chassidus itself, which is used as a weapon
that it's only be used by a weapon for people who seek Chassidus in a way that can be a weapon. For others, Chassidus is an emancipating force of freeing force.
Yeah, but the point is the emphasis on kind of don't trust yourself, Kabbalah soil.
These could be also distorted ways to do this.
It's not distorted ways, but like see, that's like the ironic thing. Like one of the like Beis Nissan, the story Beis Nissan, Beis Kislev, where they're screened at the bottom.
Suffice it to say, what you're saying. Some people have that experience, maybe many people, but not everybody. I don't have that experience. I don't at all see it that way, personally. And I have shown others that you don't have to see it that way. It's true, it's part of the culture that uses Chassidus that way, but it doesn't have to be that way. It's not inherent in Chassidus.
When I went to Benoit, the Yesod HaYesod is Mahmud HaChachmas was the story that my father was telling me about Nissan, was for Ich, was for Gleich. I'm talking Ich, I'm talking Gleich. Okay. Right? Those are the original sins.
Let's determine.
And therefore, where's the...
Let's determine, first of all, if that's healthy.
Of course we think it's unhealthy. But the question is, is it endemic to the society to the point where you can't exist within it?
You don't. No, it's not endemic. It's the let's put it this way. It's the easiest... It's the path of least resistance.
Yeah.
But it's definitely not endemic. 100%.
But don't you think the fact that the system continued to enforce that that way of thinking for so long, the Rebbe almost tacitly approved of it by not making mitzvah find your individualism, right? Because the Rebbe got what he wanted. right? He just if making sure you found a way to find your independent zich was what Chabad Chassidus and Deir Shvi was about, the Rebbe would have achieved that.
What if you think you're an individual?
I think, in other words, the Rebbe says most people aren't conformists, and let's work with that. And the individuals will find their way.
That's fine. That's why I said it's what you put in, who you are. So yes, so for some people the conformity works, and so be it. The system obviously likes that, but for some people it doesn't work.
So the question is there a paradigm shift because of where we're living today, and in terms of the way
this issue? No. The issues are the same. The challenges are different. The issues are exactly the same. There are people in the 60s and 70s that were individuals and those that were not, and today they're individuals, those are not. Today, however, individuals, because the system exerts so much control, so many individuals fall out because they can't handle it, and they can't find their way in the system.
Right.
So that is the issue.
I guess my only question is whether we can make as if what you're saying is an extension of what always was, or in a certain sense it's a break. At least in terms of what is the normative approach, right? What is the way we should be doing things? Because you couldn't say this at a Farbrengen 15 years ago and gotten away with it. You would have said, "Hey, aufgeklärt,
they still say it.
Marginalize you, right?"
But who's the they? Who makes them an authority? Since when are they? Who appointed them?
Because I believe the collective voice of Chabad is the truth of kind of what Chabad
I don't care what they feel. You keep talking about a they, an invisible they. I don't know they. In this individuality I'm talking about, everybody is equal. Who says that they have the monopoly?
No, the Minhag Yisrael Torah, the corpus
who is this
of
who?
Chabad culture is the truth.
We're going in circles. You seem to be very much affected by it. I'm not.
Okay.
So maybe it's a difference of who we are. You keep talking about that. To me, that's not a factor. It's a factor, I know, for many people.
But maybe an exception that proves the rule.
I am an exception. But there are other people that are also exceptions. I'm not the only one.
Yeah, but the point of exceptions is that they're exceptions. If you talk about exceptions, it's
because the point is because most people are conformists. That's why.
What's if your individualism causes you to go against?
The question is
that
not whether
antithetical to Chabad Chassidus, though?
No, because Chabad Chassidus covers all types of people, including conformists.
Yeah, but I don't think you can make coherence out of the Chabad part of Chassidus without a strong sense of individualism.
So what? So the conform? No, some people can. Some people can. You just said. You just spoke. Many people can, and
I
it
don't
works
think
for
they
them.
can. I think they just use denial to a great extent. That's all.
Well,
what does it mean to engage in avodah as a conformist?
Do you know someone that engages in avodah today?
Yeah, but if you don't engage avodah, what's the point of all of my?
No, I'm saying.
What's the point? What are you learning?
This words you said from Benoit was a kavyochel avodah.
It was a certain kind of.
But it wasn't avodah. It was
eliminating individuals.
It was servitude.
Yeah.
It may have been with good intentions, but it was.
That's what it is.
What's if your individualism causes
right
you to go against
the Eved of Mikner Rav?
To go against Chabad, and if you're a conformist, you listen to the term, you listen to what the Rebbe says.
If I'm understanding correctly, you're saying Maimon means that what you're putting in is moving for you.
Let's put it this way: if you think of yourself nothing more than just a conformist and just going with emotions, that's what you're going to get from it. And the system allows for that. The Rebbe had many people then and now that this is the party line, and they more or less stay with it.
You don't feel it's necessary sometimes that you are a conformist because of your individual. If you let yourself.
The individual, the independent pioneers love conformists because then they stand out.
And conformists don't do so out of necessity. They do so because that's the way they are. If you're conforming out of necessity, it's not conforming.
No. Often it is out of necessity because you don't have the courage, or it's easier.
Right, but you're not comfortable
you're lazier.
With conformity, at least, right?
Yeah, but you get used to it.
You're not a conservative. You're a conformist, but you're not a
people get used to things. People, they lower their threshold for...
Well, because they don't believe things can be any better. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, they get resigned.
This is the nature.
Or resigned. They get resigned. People get resigned and say, you know what? I have a nice family. Make a nice parnasa. That's it. I'm not rock the boat. Anyway, the people are very different, and key in these type of things is understanding yourself. Like people come to me sometimes for career counseling. Young people, and I always say like this: there are really three options. I'm not talking about which job. I'm talking about the approach. There's some people impossible for them to work for someone else. They're just too independent, maybe too arrogant. They always know better, whatever it is. And you're not going to be able to really work for somebody else without being fired. That's one type. Other people, no problem working for someone else. I have the security, pay me my salary, I do what you want. But remember, you work for someone else, you do what they want, not what you want. So it's a different. And then there's a third type that says, you know what, I'll work for someone for a few years, I'll learn the ropes, and then I'm going to go off on my own. And you have to know who you are. You have to know thyself is the first thing. You talk to people who are experienced and they challenge you and find out which one are you. Some people love to think that they're independent, and they're not really independent. They really do want to have the security and the comfort and find, but you're not going to have the ownership. If you want to be on your own, you're not going to have security. You have to raise your own. No one's going to give you money for your dreams. Now, some people are dreamers and they have to go by their dreams. And some people begin that way and they realize it's not working, so then they... And I think it's very important to know that we don't have to be the same. There's nothing right or wrong, what I just said. All three are legitimate approaches. I use the word conformist in economy in a way that sounds negative, but the truth is, I told you, I know people, very healthy, good people, like clockwork, their lives go. I could never be that way, personally. But I respect it, and I see that they're beautiful people, and they have faith, and they're dedicated, and they're committed, and they're kind. But they don't need to go out of the pale. This is their road. They don't need to go here. They walk down the street. They don't need to look in every window. They have their life.
Being independent within what? Like you could be
independent is not an end in itself. No.
Where is the room?
Who says this one? They are happy. Who says they need it? They're happy with who they are. Why do you? I don't judge them. I'm trying to explain to you. There are people like that. They're happy. Their individuality is they feel when they daven, and when they learn, they do it in their way, and that's it. They're happy with it. Anyway, you may be a person like that. How do you know you're not?
I'm asking. No. What I'm asking.
Anyway, my point I'm trying to say is that when you mature, you come to learn that there's many different ways. There's some people who not tolerant of someone that's not like them. I could see completely, you could be a very pioneering person and yet respect that type of individual. And they're not necessarily even narrow. This is their life. They're comfortable that way. That's how they work. Then there are people who absolutely can't live that way. They're absolutely always unable, they're too restless to be able to be that way. Now you have to determine, firstly, what kind of person you are. And secondly, you have to determine whether it's coming from a healthy place or unhealthy place. There are a lot of restless people that are not really restless pioneers. They're just very uncomfortable. And they live in a very, let's say, unhealthy environment, so they feel they have to always run. But that's another story. So what we're agreeing or disagreeing? I'm not sure. I'm just defining how I see the parameters.
I'm trying to understand, though, where exactly are people supposed to express their individuality?
It depends which people. Some people don't need to express their individuality quite.
Those that are capable.
It doesn't mean you're different necessarily. When you're saying it's Kamayim Al Bottom, doesn't have to be.
Here, I see, for example, I've traveled around the world. I've seen shluchim of all shapes and colors. I see shluchim who are very much the party line way. And they're successful in this. I see shluchim are extreme individualists, very, very creative, and they do their shlichus in very unique and very powerful ways. And you see their voice there, it's very different. And yes, some other shluchim may think that's a little off. I'm not talking about breaking halacha or anything like that. I'm just talking about they're very creative, and their shlichus allowed them to use their creativity and their individuality in very powerful ways. In the way, whether they're teachers or they're business administration. I see some shluchim who are excellent, brilliant business administration. And they run their shlichus that way, in a good way. It grows, it thrives, they raise a lot of money, they have a lot of creative programming. So the concept of, there are a lot of other shluchim are very conformist style, and they keep it their thing. I'm not saying they're less effective, they just have a different approach. So there's no question, listen, to me the ultimate example is music. Anybody plays an instrument here? Even if you don't. You remind me, there was a guy that said that he has three bechutanim. What did he say? He said three drickers. They two were printers, and one of them drickt auf den Herzen. It's like he said, in other words, einer spielt auf den Nerven. It's also an instrument player. In music, There's nothing more structured than music. There are only 7 or 9 scales, sounds on the musical scale. No one can come. You could say the biggest musical genius is going to come and say, I discovered a new musical sound. There's no such thing. Sound has a spectrum. That's the amount of sounds. There's only 88 keys on a piano. And yet you can play those 88 keys in infinite possibilities. You could have the same song played by one person or sung by one person. It sounds terrible. Someone else sings the same song and it comes alive like magic. What's the point? The point is structure is not the contradiction to individuality. What contradicts individuality is when you're forced to do it a certain way. But you can take the same notes and play them completely with your own individual touch. And it comes alive in your unique way, your unique voice. So the problem people think is that if you have to follow these and these guidelines, it means I can't be in myself. It's not true. We live in a world where you can't do it. You can't fly in the air. You have to eat every day. Those are constraints, but that doesn't mean you're trapped there. Now, some people remain trapped in their conformist place and they never learn to play the music. I would say, as I said, in our community, most people more or less stay in the comfort zone. First of all, because it's more comfortable. Secondly, because yes, you get punished if you go too far away. You stray away and you like I said, doesn't mean overt punishment. Subtle. Like for example, when parents disapprove of their children. They may not even say it, but they disapprove. It's very hurtful for children who are respectful to their parents and love their parents, the parents that gave them everything, and then the parents are judgmental. That is a punishment. Now, parents may not even think they're punishing, but it's punishment. It's absolute punishment. Now, what do people do with that? Each case by case. Some people learn how to work it out. Some people don't. Some people rebel and they don't have good healthy relationship with their parents. Some people, they know how to get beyond it. Whatever the reason, every case is different.
For some people, could stay conformist. Some people could stay non-conformist.
Has a lot to do with who you are. Generally speaking, a real free spirit, very hard for them to control and say, I'm going to become a conformist. It's almost impossible. Like a bird. It's like a bird that will never fly again. A bird will always end up flying if it's a real bird. But there's some people who can manage, Has a lot also to do with how healthy you are. What happens is, unfortunately, that a lot of, like I always say, a dysfunctional religious person is always worse than a dysfunctional non-religious person. Because they hide behind religion and God. There's a guy who used to come to me, he was having shalom bias issues. So once I'm at 7:70 at night, and I see him there, like around 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night. So what are you doing here? He says, my mashpia told me that because I don't get along with my wife, I should come here when she puts the children to sleep so we shouldn't fight. So I said, what are you doing here? He says, I go to shiurim, I daven, and he said, you go back home after everyone's asleep, even your wife. I said, that's the shalom bayis solution. Interesting. That's the most important time, to put the children to sleep. He tells you to come to 7:70. So, and I know who his mashpia is, who has his own shalom bayis issues. So it's like some vicious cycle. Then I say to myself, how many generations back does this go? This unhealthy.
Why is that
I said to myself, why is that unhealthy?
Because there's
if I can't tell you why that's unhealthy.
But the problem is that there's a total alienation.
Rabbi Kiva is the greatest marriage in history. Is Rabbi Kiva and Rachel, right?
You're comparing yourself not to Rabbi Akiva?
No. But think,
when you become Rabbi Akiva, we'll talk about it.
No, but they were separated for 24 years.
I just said to you, when you become Rabbi Akiva, we'll talk about it. Before you talk about Rabbi Akiva, become Rabbi Akiva. You want to, so like some people, they'll learn from Rabbi Akiva only this, but they don't know anything else. Rabbi Akiva
the fact of the matter is that separation makes the heart grow fond.
Yeah, that doesn't mean that you're never around.
So you're not always not around.
But this is coming from which brilliant advice on marriage? Your own? Where'd you pick up this hashpah, this thing?
It's just the fact of life.
No, you're stating facts now?
Your American shlichus, you can't, the guy you with American shlichus,
with all due respect, what you're saying to me sounds unhealthy.
No.
What do you mean no? That's exactly what I said. I said it's unhealthy. Are you telling me that I didn't say it or that you don't agree? What you're saying doesn't make sense to me. Anyway, the point I'm making here is, what would be the solution? You can't have dysfunctional people telling other people what to do, because they have their unhealthy standards and they're giving advice. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, but don't you feel that you have to have a healthy sense of self to be able to decide what it is that you want? And when the entire self is kind of an ideological construct of the things you should and shouldn't be doing, then how do you find what you want when you're not supposed to want things, you're supposed to do things?
Who told you you're not supposed to want things? Where'd you hear this statement? It says, "Ein anili mili," Hillel said. Which
that's like the Rabbi Kiva story. It's like we can cherry pick quotes that.
What do you mean?
But that's not the way this whole culture operates.
No, I can't deal with you're making an axiom that I don't agree with. You made a statement that
I don't agree with it either, but I'm saying.
So what do you?
But this is the way people are in this culture.
Some people are, some are not.
Some people are not, despite the culture. But the point is that the culture based on.
I can't have a conversation like this. It doesn't make sense. What are you trying to tell me exactly? That you're stuck in the culture, you can't get out of it?
Who is the self you're supposed to listen to? The Nefesh Bahamas? The Nefesh Elikis?
What about Nasei L'charav?
What is the notion of self according to Chassidus? You look at Tanya, and it says you have the divine you, and that's the you should be manifesting, which is all about doing the right thing. And then you have a you that all it's interested in is the denial of God.
You want an answer?
Is this what self?
Is this a question? No. Hold on a second. I will not answer this question unless it's a question. Is this a rhetorical question and a statement, or it's a real question?
First of all, it can be true. It's not a real question.
Then I don't want. No. Then you're preaching to me. I'm not going to respond to you if you're preaching to me.
Preaching. I'm making a point which you can choose to respond to or not.
I don't agree with it.
Why not? That's what I'm asking.
No, I don't agree with it. That's it.
Because it's not your experience.
But individualism. Why do you need to agree with you? So screw it. You're your individual. He's his own individual. You disagree. That's
this is what he decided is what reality is for him. But I don't accept that reality. So you have to realize that.
But don't you recognize though how this is not a random thing? When you went into a certain yeshiva, you had a certain parent, you had a certain environment. That it comes out of the way the Chassidus is understood. That's what I'm saying.
Do you ever have a conversation with someone that disagrees with you?
All the time.
And you respect that they may disagree with you?
Yeah.
So maybe I disagree with you.
But that doesn't mean I agree with everyone that I disagree with.
No, but I just
that I respect everyone.
No, but I'm asking you, is it possible that there's someone that may have a legitimate approach?
For sure, if you make an argument that makes
coherent. But what happens if you're blinded by your own opinion and you don't know if it's coherent? You decide it's not coherent because it doesn't fit your model. What do you do?
If you believe on a relatively speaking notion of objectivity, then we can interact with ideas outside ourselves.
No, I'm asking a question. How do you know that you're not blinded?
Escape subjectivity?
Yeah, how do you do that?
Well, you have to believe in some sort of objective sphere that you.
No, you have to first thing believe that you may be making a mistake. Are you capable of making mistakes?
Yeah.
So that's the first step. So that's I am telling you that you're talking about a culture that you experienced. I'm talking about Chassidus and Torah that comes from Shemayim, from God, and God is the one that created individuality, and God is the one that created the rules as well. So for me, individuality and the rules are not a contradiction. That's my axiom. You could disagree. I have no problem. I have no problem at all if you disagree, but that's my given. Without that given, I have nothing to say. The same God that created individuality is the same God that created the rules.
I want to believe in that. I'm just saying that the way Chassidus is thought about and
understood. No. You could say the people that taught it to you that way. I just gave you a different axiom.
Yeah, but what is the meaning of Chassidus other than the collective understanding of it by the culture that engages with it? The text on its own is meaningless outside of its collective interpretation.
No.
Read every normative interpretation of Tanya, and this is the only conclusion you can come to. There is no self. There are two oppositional forces.
We have a different force.
I have a different opinion here, right here. It doesn't accept it.
We have a different opinion right here.
Okay, so then make the argument according to Tanya for what the self is.
Okay.
That's what I.
His conclusion is the only one that you can come to. That's what he's basically saying. And you make an argument. Who says your conclusion is B'chlal? Why you make an argument? Why do I have to make the argument? You came to a conclusion.
I'll make the argument to you. I've been saying half of it.
I don't accept it, and I repeat for the 10th time.
I understand that you don't accept it. I want to understand why you don't accept it, other than the fact that your experience is different, and that for hashkafa reasons you have it. I also have those hashkafa.
And all you have is experience, and I have experience. Why is your experience more valid than my experience?
Because I'm trying to ground my experience.
I need an answer to that question. Why is your experience more valid than my experience?
It's not more valid.
So why are you so convinced that's the way it is, Tanya?
No, because
you're convinced that Tanya is only one way to interpret Tanya, the way the culture interprets.
I'm asking for the other interpretation. That's what I'm asking.
Well, I've been sitting and talking about it for 2 hours.
No. You've been saying that you need to be an individual, but you haven't been explaining
look.
How
if you're in a listening mode, I'll speak. If you're in a speaking mode, then you speak.
Why can't it be both together?
Because there's other people here, and
maybe they want to hear it.
And with all due respect, I hear not a person who's thinking. I think I hear a person who's been shaped by a culture and is unable to see it another way. That's my sense.
That could be. I'm asking to hear it a different way.
No, but I don't think you could. I really think because I see how
this is his life.
No. You are adamant in your way, and I think the only thing I can leave you a message is there may be a different way to look at it, and you need to maybe learn that different way.
No, I'm dying to hear a different way to look at it. It's just it's not convincing.
There you go. That's the same thing as saying that there is no other way. It's not convincing. Anyway. But listen, I'm not convinced by what you're saying. So all I'm convinced is that you were affected this way. You said you went to Brinois, and they told you there's no ich.
No, but Brinois is the pinnacle of Chabad.
Who decided? Who made that statement? That's the pinnacle.
I'm not saying it, but it's the normative way of doing things.
I'm telling you, it's not the normative way.
Every bucket, that's not a Brinois. It's
come
not
on,
because he's not
Siddish. One second, come on is the persuasive.
And every Brinois, every mashpia is trying to be Brinois, but it's unable to be Brinois.
So to me, I see it like this. No. What I see is like this.
Trying to be Brinois. Somebody should settle for Brinois.
Okay, listen, I've seen. Okay, look. I've seen casualties from Brinois and from Detroit and from other places.
But these aren't casualties.
Yes, it's just casualties. Exactly.
No, but they are. No. It's not. They are not that way despite Brinois. They are that way because Brinois succeeded. Right.
The only thing what I understood.
Okay.
You asked the question, right? So
let me continue what I was saying.
What I understood is that you can. Your input will make it
Look, it sounds like.
What does that mean?
Well, that's how we show
the whole thing implodes. Like a Isurus Sato kind of idea, right?
Yeah.
No, not really.
I understand.
In other words, you have to. If it's what you're saying is, unless you put the effort in, unless it's coming from, or is that totally off?
I'm not sure what your question is. What are you asking?
You're giving the whole thing about the whole thing that the way you look at it, that's how it's going to reflect back on you.
So you're looking for a Hebrew word for it?
No, not looking for a Hebrew word. I'm looking for that if it's about my own self, putting myself into something, as opposed to just being like you were saying before. In your days, all you have to do is go. You have to put much effort. You just have to be short on 70, and that really ended up uplifting. In other words, that was more of a output. That was more. It wasn't your it wasn't your effort. It wasn't your. That's how I'm asking.
Yeah, fun of buying a coffee and a sandwich and driving home.
I'm not articulating
about the buffer and the sandwich.
It's all right. It's fine.
Someone self-constrained.
Okay, L'chaim, guys. Maybe we conclude here. What time is it?
When you're saying that what do you mean that you give your own? When you say you give your own perspective and it bounces back or reflects back in a practical way, what does that mean?
Well, that's what it's about.
Like in his case, Tanya, how should Shlim next time Shlim is losing Tanya?
First of all, I'm tired.
Yeah.
And to come away with not with the way he did.
You're not loving the whole situation.
What should be his reflection? How should he?
It's basically not one of those like good things.
You have to look for the relevance that makes sense to you, that works for you, and that's it.
But that sounds like nitpicking,
right?
No, it's
nitpicking.
It's kind of like the reform movement, like we take what we like and we don't like.
Because you were like,
it's called. Who said like? I didn't say the word like. Look for the lesson in your life that you need to take from it. What the question is that?
No, because when it comes to Teda, there has to be a thing of Kabbalah self.
Okay, so
you can't twist Teda in your own liking or how you want it to sound.
idea that we are. By the way, it's the same topic.
So my question is, practically speaking,
next year,
how do you bring out individuals?
Anyway, let me tell you the story with An Belinitzer, if I may. I'll give you a little introduction. The year Tavshin Mem Nun Gimel, Tavshin Nun Gimel. So it was after the Rebbe had a stroke, and so there's a Kiddush HaShluchim that year, like every year. And there was a panel discussion in Holoteira, the big Zal there. It was about dealing with the challenges, because it was after the stroke of the Rebbe, and the Shluchim were going very difficult times then, because the Rebbe was not speaking, and no one knew where things were going to happen. There was a lot of stuff going on. So on the panel was myself, Emmanuel Shachad Olav Shalom, and Shmuli Beteach, who was then Shliach in Oxford. And so Emmanuel Shachad, I think, spoke first, and then Shmuli Beteach got up there, and he started his style. Started to carry on that we have to lose our dependency on the Rebbe, and that's why we're in this situation. The Rebbe is now what he called was a leader in recession. He used this very negative word, and that we have to learn to be independent adults. Now, the more he was going on, the more infuriating.
Paraphrasing? That's what he said.
Paraphrasing.
No, that's what he said.
No, nobody threw things in it? What do you say?
Finish the story. I'm just letting him say the story.
And as he was going on, it was, the place was getting very angry and infuriated. He was talking to shluchim. He wasn't talking to strangers. And I remember, because I was next on the panel, so I got it from some people sending me notes, make sure that you put him in his place, etc. Anyway, he carried on this thing about to be independent, individualistic. And the Rebbe was here, so the Rebbe's glow overwhelmed everybody, but now it's time for us, each of us, to shine in our own way. That was the sense, really, the gist of it. So I got up afterwards and I said, look, I told the story with Adam Belinitzer, which is it's a really sadistic story and very fundamental in many themes of the Rebbe's Farbrengen and approach in general. And the story is like this: that Tzemach Tzedek, times of Tzemach Tzedek, there was Tzemach Tzedek would go very often to Petersburg to deal with the government, deal with gzeiros and different laws to make life a little easier for the Jews. So once he couldn't go for whatever reason, so he called an Aaron Belinitzer, who was a big chassid, a big mafashteya, a big cup, also Nuchsidis, well, he was a mahus. And he called him in to, and told him, Shlichus, that I want you to go on my behalf and deal with whatever he was dealing with. Rabbi Adam said to the Tzemach Tzedek, what do I do if I have a suffix, if I don't know what to do? Remember there was no emails and no phones and no connection. So the Tzemach Tzedek said, Zolz boyin al das atzmei. You should use your eigen das and resolve the issue. The Rebbe Marash was standing there when it happened, when this exchange was going on. And the Rebbe Marash, without saying anything, thought to himself, Aaron Belin says a chassid, as a mahus, but maybe it's too much of a mahus. What's pshat a chassid has das atzmei? His own deis. So he thought, something, he's maybe very good for doing this job, but he's too independent. That was the Rebbe Marash's thought. Anyway, Rabban went off to Petersburg, and that's exactly what happened. He was dealt with. There was a situation, a dilemma, didn't know what to do. Tzemach Tzedek was in Lubavitch, and they were sitting at the table. And Tzemach Tzedek sensed it. Tzemach Tzedek said that Rab Aaron matet sich in Peterburg. He sensed that he's struggling. A few minutes passed, and the Tzemach Tzedek smiled and said, "Good, et mechaven gewen." It means he resolved the issue, and he was mechaven to where the Rebbe would have done it. When the Rebbe Marash heard that, he realized his mistake. That on the contrary, Rabban was even a bigger person than he thought he was. That even though he had das atzmei, and he had a daya rechova, he was a expansive person and broad-minded, and yet he ultimately aligned his view with the Rebbe's view, and he did what the Rebbe would have done. So this paradox is really a paradox that you see in all of Chassidus. I remember Pasha Ba'aleischa Tov Nun Aleph was the last time Leis Ato the Rebbe spoke Ba'aleischa. Ba'aleischa was one of these central themes that the Rebbe, this theme. Why does it say Ba'aleischa, not Bad Lekeischa? Rashi says, because Kedei Ad Shetei Shalev Eselim Me'eleha. Because Ba'aleischa means to raise the flames. It should say to kindle the flames. Hadlokas Neidus, Hadlos Neidus. So the Rebbe asked the question then, and many times, the Torah has to change the words. Who cares? Why does he have to wait? What happens when you light the candles, the flames? The Kohen Gadol Aaron, he lights a flame. It takes a second to catch. So the mitzvah is he has to wait till it catches. He can't go right away and move to the next one. And what's the big thing that Rebbe said? He'll move to the next one. It burns out. You go back and light it again. Nice. You have to change the word that it's likuvet. That you have to make sure the flame is rising on its own. Wait that extra second. And the Rebbe answered that the Adlokas Neidus is a really central theme of all of Yiddishkeit, that we have to be Neidus Lahoyer, Ner Mitzvah V'Tere'er, Ner Hashem Nishmas Adam, to illuminate. And there's two ways to illuminate. You could educate somebody by giving them knowledge and information, or you could teach people methodology. When you teach people information, you're telling them the answers to the questions. But when you teach them methodology, you're teaching them how to answer questions. Himidu talmidim harb. They should stand on their own, on their own feet. And then the Rebbe went into a whole very complicated discussion. This Ba'aleischa Nun Aleph. What was the discussion? That Sof Kol Sof, is it really Aveda B'Keich Atzmei? If the Kohen didn't light the Menorah, that flame, even though it's Shalev Eselim Me'eleha, it still wouldn't have been lit when the Kohen didn't do it. So it's not really on its own. Afterwards, it's burning on its own, but it really came from somewhere. And the same thing with the Medrash says, Mi'ag Dimani V'Ashalom. The Eibishter gives us life, He gives us strength, He gives us health, He gives you arms, He allows your arms to move. So you do a mitzvah, fine, you get a little schar, but without all that, you wouldn't be able to do a mitzvah. He gives you the klaf, the tefillin, the whole thing. Everything comes. And then I went to the whole thing about b'chira. Is b'chira really b'chira? If the Eibishter gives you b'chira, do you really have b'chira? Because He gives you. So it's back and forth. It's back and forth. Is it independent, or is it the kayach mamayla? And it was very unclear. But we had the opportunity to ask questions. So I wrote up a series of questions on this to the Rebbe after Shabbos. Sunday. And it's the only time the Rebbe answered what he answered. The Rebbe would always answer very quickly. He would give us an answer, and we'd use it and weave it into the Sikha. Here the Rebbe wrote on the side of the page, he didn't answer the question, or one would think he didn't answer, and he wrote, the whole theme of the Farbrengen, Kol Nesei Svadus, is that you should be a Shalev Eselim Me'eleha, and you're asking me to answer your question. We never got such an answer. I wasn't happy with this answer. I want the Rebbe's answer. I'm not interested in my answer. But I thought about it many times, and I thought about it also, this would be the Blaz Ba'aleischa. Maybe the Rebbe was saying something that would be relevant as the years would roll on.
You told this after, not at the time.
Well, you have so many questions.
No.
It's not a press conference. I'm telling you the story. It doesn't matter what I thought so much. So the Rebbe, like in a way, was But then I said to myself, this reminds myself of the story of Aaron Belinitzer, so was it really Aaron Belinitzer's independent das, or did the Rebbe give him the keach to have his das? And his bchira was to make sure it's aligned. The answer is both. Because the fact of the matter, you have students and teachers where you could see very clear this student is an excellent student of the teacher, but he has no ability to solve a problem on his own. If the teacher is there and he knows what the teacher would have answered, he'll have an answer. Give him a situation that's a little different, he won't have the breitkeit to know how to apply the methodology to a new situation. So when Chassidus talks about the Chushei HaTalmud become like the Chushei HaRav, it's not saying that the student keeps going back to the teacher. He becomes so trained by his teacher that you can't even distinguish that. When he says something, you don't even know whether it was him or the way this is what his teacher would have done. So all knowledge, the best knowledge is that type of knowledge. You look even science, secular scientists, the real good ones will all say, we don't own the knowledge, we were channels of the knowledge that came from a greater place. They all will say that. Obviously everyone has their ego and arrogance and so on. Why is it that Hillel, the halach is like Hillel and not like Shammai? The Gemara says because he was an Amvisin, he was humbler. So the obvious question Chassidus asks, what do you mean? Humility is a very nice virtue. He would first repeat Shammai's words before his own. But what is humility? He should get an award for humility. What does humility have to do with intelligence? If Shammai makes a better argument, why does Hillel's humility make him the Pesach? So Chassidus says, because humility tells you that you can trust his objectivity. Because you can be brilliant, but if you're not humble, maybe you're subjective. And if you're humble, you can trust. That's why Reish is Chachma Yiras Hashem.
I don't understand the question.
So anyway,
being subjective means you're wrong?
No, but it's possible that you're not.
Yeah, but if you make a good argument...
Agenda means you have an agenda.
Yeah, but if you make a good argument, the argument should stand on its own.
Someone who's humble, whether it fits my way of thinking, good.
So Reish is Chachma Yiras Hashem. So people think that means that Yiras Hashem is greater than Chachma. No. The wisest people know that if you enter into wisdom and you don't have the capacity to know that you have blind spots, you may be subjective, you can't trust that person's wisdom. We all have blind spots. What's the difference between an objective person and a subjective person? Everyone's subjective. The difference is the subjective person knows he's subjective, and he knows it all the time, and will always double check with another person. Eyev is a b'kedus, open to hearing a different way, even if it's not agreeable. And I write. I'm a writer, and I teach people how to write. I'll tell you an experience I had many years ago, and this is something that happens almost every day. When I teach shiurim and so on, you learn a mime at a page, and right away everybody's arguing what it says on the page. And I say to myself, they haven't learned the first rule that before you argue about a page, you have to first know what it says on the page. So I give certain workshops on memory, how you remember things. Here's one of the workshops. You open up a book. I did this with maybe over 1,000 people, in small groups of 20. Open up any book you like, read it as many times as you wish, no time limit. Close the book and write down on a piece of paper what you just read. Listen to this. I've done it with the groups, and always the same thing. I said, before we begin, let's estimate. How much percent are you going to think you're going to capture on the page? Not word for word, it's just the flow of the ideas. Most people say between 65 and 85%. And I can tell you the first time around, almost nobody gets even 65%. You'll see. Then they start the exercise. People look at the book, they read it, then they write down. The smart ones you see finish very quickly. And then after around 50 minutes, everyone's done. I ask everyone to give the book to a neighbor, to someone with what you wrote, and let them mark it how close. The ones that did it faster get always the lowest marks. The smartest ones in the room are usually the ones with the lowest marks, to the point, and this I kid you not, there are people who actually write things that contradict what it says in the book. And when I ask them, how could you write that? They say, because I didn't agree with it. You hear? They didn't even listen to the exercise. I didn't agree with it, so they couldn't write down what it said, because their way of thinking was more important than what it said.
you. Someone asked like one of these panels asked you how you were able to remember the Rebbe was saying in Shabbos.
This is exactly what I'm going to speak now on that. Exactly. So what happens the next time around? Everybody's been humbled now. Everyone's overconfident. Everyone thinks they're smarter than they are, and everyone thinks they're a better listener than they are. I always use this trick question: who in this room thinks he's a good listener? Don't raise your hands, please, because no good listener will ever raise their hand. You know why? Besides the fact that it's humility, a good listener, you can't ask a person if you're a good listener. You have to ask other people, is that person a good listener? You say you're a good listener, and I'll tell you, when I speak to you, you don't listen at all. You can't pass on yourself with a good listener. You could say I'm a good speaker, but you can't say you're a good listener.
How do you say you're a good speaker?
Also not. That's true. You're right. So the point is, the second time around, because everybody, the overconfidence is gone, this is what happens. Everybody's paper, the second time around, is 20% better than the first time. So I always say, improve your memory 20%. But you need to be humbled first. Because people don't realize how the brain works. When we, by Chazara, exactly, how do you repeat a Farbrengen of 5 hours? There's only one way. Not being too smart. I can tell you right now, the sikhs I understood, I don't remember as well as the ones I didn't understand. Because your seichel gets in the way. Because we have the temptation, especially if you're intelligent, to process information. You don't hear an idea unadulterated and pure. You hear it through your perspective. Like if the Rebbe says something, you say, "Oh, I learned that in a Maimon, now it answers a question." I did the Torah lemivla lepoled. I did the Torah lepoled lemivla. If you're busy absorbing, you can't be busy exuding. So there's like two wheels in the brain: one that absorbs and one that processes. Most adults process while they're absorbing. That's why most people don't listen well. And try it out. Listen to anything you think that's valuable, and then try to repeat it. Sikha, whatever. You'll see very often you hear something really great, and then the next day you say, "I'm going to share it with someone," and you say, "It was great." They say, "Go ahead." You don't have words. Why? Because you didn't really absorb it. You heard it. You heard the speaker make sense. Absorbing is a whole aveda, and it's hard to do. It's very hard to do. Because for an intelligent person who's processing knowledge, very hard for them to shut off the processor and just absorb.
So we're trained.
So the key, it's training, and we're not trained to absorb really well. People do not absorb. They look at a page, like as I said, I'm learning my money with good people, smart people. Right away, they're ready. And then I said, did you read what it said? And if you haven't mastered what it said, how could you give an opinion on it? Maybe what it was... when the Rebbe spoke, we didn't say every 2 minutes, "Rebbe, by the way, I have a different way of looking at it," or even if you don't disagree, explain yourself. It was absorbing. Why am I saying all of this? Because Aaron Belinitzer was, yes, he had a great Das Atzmei, but because he had Bittel, the Bittel allowed his Das Atzmei not to get in the way, and he actually was able to align himself to what the Rebbe would have done. And that is ultimately the real paradox. That you can actually be a total individual and yet totally be aligned to a wisdom that's greater than yourself. And it's not a contradiction at all. Anyone that thinks that they have to innovate to the extent that it's completely new as if it never came, there's no such thing. Knowledge is never new. All knowledge is based on previous knowledge. There's no such thing as completely, like I said before, go create a new musical note. There's no such thing as a new musical note. But a interpretation of a note or a presentation of it in a new way, by all means. And that's the key thing in this. So, for example, there are certain approaches to what Chassidus teaches. As I mentioned before, I've seen people take Chassidic ideas and completely use their own creativity, present it in creative ways, in musical ways, in poetic ways, in different forms of projects that are gewaldig. And you can almost see their talent. And yet, you see it's true to the original. Like that professor that wrote his big paper his whole lifetime. He showed it to the wizards, and they all said to him, "Great. It's good and original. But there's one problem. The part that's good is not original, and the part that's original is not good." That's true wisdom. When I said before about the Rebbe, when the Rebbe said, the Alter Rebbe said, the Rebbetzin said, "Sie willen hören, was ein Rebbe hat zu sagen." Why didn't they say, "Sie willen hören, was der Rebbe hat zu sagen"? But the Alter Rebbe had nothing to say. No, because he knew that wisdom is all coming. Reish is Chachma Yiras Hashem. The Gemara starts on Dav Beis, never on Dav Aleph. Aleph is blank, because all wisdom begins with that. That's why the humility of Hillel determined. Because humility makes you smarter, yes, because it makes you more open to hearing different opinions. I deal with this, deal brainstorm sessions in your office and work. Someone comes up with a great idea. The first thing you do is don't say it's a great idea, you say let's challenge it. Not because you want to challenge it, you want to stretch it in every possible way. So you come with a devil's advocate, and then back and forth, and that's called Liban Hilchasa. Why can't you just say, it's a brilliant idea, let's just go with it? Because you want to really stretch it, and you want to look at it in every possible angle. If arrogance gets in the way, then it's my idea. I remember a Melech people used to say to us, difference between Chochma and Bina. Bina says, ich verstehe. And Chochma sagt, der Inyan is emes. It's very different. Or like you said, Chochma nemt the Inyan nemt the mensch, and Bina the mensch nemt the Inyan. So what's more important, the mensch or the Inyan? The truly wise people and the people you can trust are people who you know the Inyan is more important than the mensch. Now, of course, you want the person to understand, but the Inyan is stronger, and that's where, ironically, individuality comes when you, in a sense, like lose your individuality to something greater than yourself. And this is a big yisod in Chassidus. This has been distorted by shivas like Brinois and others, because they take the concept of bittul and they, in an immature and I would say also insecure way, think the only way to bittul is by being mavatal people, annihilating them. Kol Chassidus talks, there's a scoop in the dresses to turn somebody into ashmata, that's bittul. That's sick. That's unhealthy. Since when does turning someone into ashmata, where does it say such a thing? It's hepech of everything. A person's been created tzelem Elokim. So with all the bittul you want, are we created the tzelem Elokim or we're not? That alone makes a person valuable. But you're valuable not because you are valuable, because God made you and the godliness in you is valuable. I mean, this is like, to me, Aleph Beis of Chassidus. I don't even need a beard. So when I see systems that people distort this, to me it's a dover pasha that they're distorting, because it goes against the grain of the very foundations of everything. You know? It comes down to ego, and self, unfortunately, distorts things. So I don't have even a havamina that Chabad is not a culture. I'll say I have no problem if someone feels that's the culture they want to be part of and that's their cult. I'm going to tell them what to do. I'll respect them, but doesn't mean I respect the decision. And I'm going to tell them what to do. But I think that the Rebbe, to me, is like I said, the Alter Rebbe and the same are beyond individuals. It's not about a person, like that I said before the story. It's not the Benkel's grace, not the person. Now that doesn't mean the Rebbe was not a great man. But the Benkel is greater, and that's why he's a great man, because he recognized that the Benkel is the key. The cause is more important than the individual. Anyway, I can go on and on. I still think what I said before about Kamayim Aponim, it all comes down to what you put in. If you want to treat like a child, you want to behave like a child to a father, then you get what a child gets. If you behave like an adult, you get what an adult gets. It's all what you put in. The investment will create the action will create the reaction. I see it all the time. There are people who have a very different view of the Rebbe than what I just described. If it works for them, gesundheit. But it really comes down to that. I think people see what they want to see. And as long as it's fine. Like I said, there are Jews that have a certain path they follow. Some Jews are like Levana, and some are like the sun. The sun is very consistent. The Levana is the one that is shifting all the time. L'chaim.
Let me ask you.
You have a lot of questions, huh?
Tell me, that's in Bina or Chachma? Isn't it like a Bina thing that even when he's feeling himself, he's not trying?
I don't know. Does it say? It's just Chushi means all the Chushim. I don't know if it's one specific one.
It sounds like when he's taking himself seriously, even then he sees right.
Okay, well, but you mean Bina? Maybe. I don't know. I mean, why not just Bina? Why not all the tools? You know, people who master knowledge, they don't just master information. They master a method. That's Chushe to me. That's the method of the teacher. Students assumes that method. And it's a healthy method.
Someone that could figure what the teacher would think. Is that Chushe?
You know,
he has the vision to see what the teacher would do.
Like, you go to somebody, you feel they're an expert. You feel you're in the hands of an expert. What is the expert? Because they have, it's not just they know, they have the vision, the sense, that right away rubs them the wrong way. It's a trust. I think one of the big problems in our community is we have no one to trust. So, like, this one says, this one you could trust, this one says you can't trust. So you end up in the formative years, who do I look to for direction? Who can I ask? I'm not talking about a halacha. Who can I ask for a chassidische hergish on something?
But everybody who has a heritage is also going to have an agenda. I mean, everybody and the people that don't have the agenda are the people that are boring to listen to.
Well, no, what's like an agenda? Why? There are people who care.
But again, if you...
I think the people with an agenda are not really people you can really talk to because you feel like they're selling you something. I remember, when you're bochum in this, people come to you and they try to fakef your luction.
Who doesn't? How do you know who doesn't have an agenda?
Why should anyone have an agenda?
I think there are many people that don't have an agenda. There are people who really you can go to, and they care. You give them a situation, you share with them a question, and they'll share with you a legitimate answer without an agenda. No, if they are in a gay bedover, they'll have an agenda maybe. But if they're not in a gay bedover, why not? Someone comes and asks a question, let's say a personal question. Why, again, I'm not talking about a nod, a fool. I'm talking about someone that has a pseichel and they talk to them. Unless they have if it's their brother or sister, or they're going to gain something from it.
Let me ask you this.
Look, this is like the yesod of everything. I mean, what is the main reason we have a selech harav or mashpia? Because you want someone that has an objective perspective, that doesn't see it. Look, this is all day. People pay consultants millions of dollars. For what? I know some people pay consultants not to listen to them. There is that also, But people pay. Why? Because you go to an expert. Let's say you're going to go buy a house. No person's going to go buy a house without a lawyer or without some advice. How do you know they're doing it right? You need to have people that are going to... Why? Because we all respect that person has more knowledge than I am. They have more experience. They'll see things that we don't see. The joke they say? When a man with money meets a man with experience, you know what happens? The man with the experience ends up with the money, and the man with the money ends up with the experience. That's how it works. And come on, look how many answers that Rebbe gave. Yedidim Mevinim. Why you did? Because they know you and they care about you. But a maven, they understand their experience. They know objectivity is a big one for sure. I said one of the big problems in our community, which is also part of the culture, is we don't have many people to trust, and we lose trust. Who could you trust? This one is this, and this one that, and everyone, But you have to believe Einim Mevakar Lefikechan. If the Rebbe Bavon and everything, you have to believe that you could find direction or answers.
What were you saying before about Benoit or Chalal?
I was never in Benoit.
No.
I just heard what I heard from him. I heard from many people.
No, the unhealthy.
The whole job is to beat up the yesh.
Okay, so most yeshiva systems are built around this concept.
Not all, no. Yeah, some are more extreme than others.
So my question is, the fact of the matter is...
By the way, I'm not even saying Benoit is bad. Maybe for some people it's excellent. I've heard very good things. I heard for some people it was excellent for them. Some people it was terrible for them. So I'm not going to say it all comes down to a lot of what... I guess different places for the different strokes for different folks.
Not the Shiva you said, so that would be fine. But what I was going to ask is...
Shivas I went through were nothing to write home about.
No, my question is like this, because a bacher has to go through that stage. You know what Meish Lazar?
Father of Beryl, yeah.
So I guess he got married to Chaf, maybe something around that. At that time, it was not being established really by Chaf.
I think he went on mute.
Okay.
And you really wanted that the Rebbe Shmuel No. It came from somewhere, maybe. Because there was different. The Rebbe was for certain people, certain conditions. Was it maybe he could convince you he was marrying a Yaf?
He married a Steinmetz. Yafi also married a Steinmetz. They all married Steinmetz, yeah. Lazar, Tauber.
Ishver didn't have a beard.
No, I don't think so.
Somebody said so.
Anyway, what's the story? What's the point?
If Ishver would start to grow a beard, maybe if Ishver would take on it to grow a beard, maybe he would. Yeah.
But the Rebbe never made the shver.
Somebody maybe mentioned because at that time there were certain conditions.
So what's the point?
So he was desperate. So he went to shver and he said, being like a real typical bacher, like if you're not don't grow your beard, it's off the shidduch. So I guess the shver is very upset. Like what the heck? Like what the very upset about this.
So what happened?
It's the balagana from Baruch Bachman.
So what happened?
I guess you were like a nasty letter, not like a letter to the Rebbe. Like what's the Baruch Bachman is chutz, this balagana. You know the way Bachram are.
What did Rebbe answer?
So I remember seeing this years ago. That someone was saying that there's a clip, something with the American dollar. Eventually, there's one day faction, but
they're mature.
But as Bahrain, there has to be this the American dollar. That was a clip that I don't remember the whole. Basically, the crux is basically
they're like extremists, kanoim.
Yeah. So that when they're older, when they're already married and doing whatever they're doing, they're not owned by it or.
They have a chutzpah. I got it. A chassidische chutzpah. I got it.
So how do you get? So there is this concept of Bahrain.
So what's your point? It's a great answer.
Get that
it's beautiful.
In systems like Benoit.
Really? I didn't say there's no positive elements. I said this element. It's fine. There could be a good thing and there could be negative things.
But
no. I know people who have. We destroy someone's self-esteem. You destroy someone's self-confidence. That does not necessarily go with healthy approach. You know.
So my question is like this, because the way
I think the idea is just to follow blindly some approach is ridiculous. First of all, there are no two bachrim alike. You think you're just one size fits all. Human beings are human beings. Different human beings need different things. Some people can deal with more challenge. Some people, if you challenge them, you're going to undermine them. You can't demoralize a person. No, demoralize means a person. The Alter Rebbe makes demoralizing a person is one of the greatest crimes. You know what demoralizing means? It means breaking a person to the point that they feel like garbage. There's no such derech of Chassidus. There's not even nowhere. Even on Mol, when tzaddikim rolled in the snow and they punished themselves, even that was not meant to demoralize them. It was breaking the hold of Gashmis. Today we're not shaykh to that. But demoralizing is never acceptable.
Who said demoralizing? What I'm saying is that
someone said, is there a positive? Listen, when you go to the army, there's a certain Kabbalah sale. You wake up 5 o'clock in the morning or whenever, and you got to load up 300 pounds on your back. You got to climb wet mountains, and no one's going to ask you whether you like it or not. You can't run to your mother. You can't run to your mother and say, "I'm not comfortable." This is it. This is a mashmas. Frankly, I didn't see in our yeshiva system that. I saw unhealthy versions of it.
So how do you apply a healthy version? For example,
what's that? A healthy version of that halavai, we had it.
How do you create that? How do you create a system?
It's a very good question, and everyone's trying to.
The Bacher culture, the way.
I don't know. I'm not right now here to develop an education system. I just know that what we have is not a healthy version of that. Even when they try that, look, in every yeshiva there is a seder. You have to wake up a certain time. You have to go. I'm all for that. First of all, in Shiva, who doesn't? Baseball players wear uniforms. There's rules to the game. I didn't say rules are a problem here.
Yes,
but if the rules are demoralizing and that's all you get, on the contrary, I think rules actually help cultivate individuality. Because you know how to be a team player. And then as you grow, you also grow confidence. Rules are not meant to destroy a person's confidence.
Let me ask you this. Not ask you this, but stop.
Look at this. Listen, there's unhealthy conformity and there's healthy. I didn't say conformity is always bad. Like I said, in the army, you got to march in line, and that's it. There's that conformity. It's conformity, but it's a conformity coming from a logical place that it's teaching you discipline.
I think we all recognize that there's a balance between these two tensions all the time.
But
the question is where that line is.
Yeah, but there are people. I know people by name that have demoralized young people and destroyed them.
But we're not talking about people that are malicious. And that are deliberately.
They may not even be malicious. They may be just idiotin.
Yeah, or even idiotin. I'm not.
Okay, so let me explain what I'm saying. For example,
you hear stories. I don't want to go into suicide things. People who were driven to suicide because of demoralization.
For sure, but I think it's
Shreklach.
What's interesting about it is how it's ideologically coherent. It's not only about individuals doing.
You don't have to start mentioning names.
No, I'm not mentioning names. I'm saying. Let me ask you this. Expound what I'm saying. So in other words, there's a certain. I think there's a certain for Lubavitch to be the way we are. In other words, sort of, I guess, growing that culture. There's something like chluchis, you know what I mean, that a bacher has to have. At least for a little bit. For a few years.
We're not talking about the positive environment. It's called osmosis. You hang around. Look. You have to remember. Stop thinking in terms of black and white. There's nothing as black and white in this world. There's a lot of things that are beautiful, even in this culture, even if it's conformist. There's beautiful things. There are beautiful people. There's a lot of things we pick up. Like a Lubavitcher child, most Lubavitcher children know something that most Jews don't know. That there's a kavon. That you were created to make an adira b'tachtein. That is a big, beautiful. So a lot of when you say lachluchis is the environment. We hang around the right people. There's an environment. We're not taking away from the positive, but then there's negative sides. You have to know which one you're talking about. It's not either or. You can have both.
100%.
And I can tell you another thing. I told you before. Different students, different people are different. Some people lachluchis works easily for them. Others are shy, let's say, or they're being bullied. So they can't even appreciate lachluchis. They end up being hurt by the same system that another person grows from. You can't see that. You had classmates. All the classmates had the same experience. Sometimes Chassidus Farbrengen, let's say, for some Bachim was really good, and for others they felt very left out or something, or they picked on. You know, Mashpia decides that this Bachim needs to be picked on, and he hurts them and humiliates them and stuff like that. Even though that same Farbrengen may have been good for others. Everything's balanced. Nothing is black and white. There's balance. Everything is balanced. There's a lot of beautiful things in our. Our goal here is to get things better than they are. Not, obviously there are. We have a lot of problems. But I'm not looking at problems just for problems. They're problems we have also good things. We have a lot of assets as well. You've got to have to look at everything. End of the day, everybody has to look at themselves and say, what do I have and where can I grow towards? And what's blocking me from getting there? So that's the only thing I would leave with you. Think in terms of where do you want to end up, what do you want to accomplish, and how do you get there? We all have our own life story. Some of us are very healthy self-esteem, some have not. Everybody can move and grow. There's no such thing as being doomed.
How are you saying? You also see like on the national level.
What do you do, for example? Yeah.
I work in the museum.
What do you do in the museum? Accountant? Okay. So you have to know. So everybody's to look in their life and see, today's Yud Aleph Nissan, how am I fulfilling what the Rebbe wants of me in this world? That's what it comes down to. The Rebbe is representing the cause. Just to qualify, make sure I'm not talking about a cult personality.
The Kamayim upon him is a personal thing, right? Like each person for themselves, the way they perceive what they're doing is the way it comes back to them. But passing that on, how does that work the same way?
Talking about your children?
Yeah.
The best thing a parent can do for children is to be healthy. More than anything, you have to be a healthy parent. A healthy parent means it's a certain element of not projecting on your children Yom Shagasin, which a lot of parents unfortunately do. They have their way and they project. Secondly, you have to nurture your child. You have to pay attention. Like the Rebbe Rashab says, just like it's a mitzvah to lake film every day, it's a mitzvah to think about the chinuch. Chinuch doesn't just mean the school, right? I mean the child. With priorities. Most people are busy making money, or they're busy with distractions. A lot of shluchim neglect their children. I know a lot of children of shluchim who are very, very hurt because their parents were so much mesiras nefesh they forgot that they had children. They were nicer to strangers than to their own. So you have to look at yourself, huh? For that reason,
right? So what's the balance? Like, it's leading by example.
You need. Listen, it's hard to speak every case by case. You have to speak to someone. And I don't know your details. What's the age of the children? What are you doing? You have to review it with someone, right? An objective way, and see what could you do to improve things. It really comes down to that. You don't wait till they get old. You have to start right away. Everything happens when you're young. You do it the right way. It's like going on a road.
Right.
By the time you get lost in the woods, it's going to be very hard to get back on track.
But the idea is still the same. If you live the life of...
It's like the girls with their father's drink. They don't want to go with a guy.
Come on, upon him. The idea, it reflects more on...
Upon is mainly meant to say that you control your destiny.
Right.
Don't look for something else to do.
Right.
It's the way you bounce the ball, that's how it's going to bounce.
It reflects more on just you also on your family.
Look, listen. There are people, I was just dealing with a family where the father gets very angry and yells. A lot of yelling. Verbal abuse. And it creates a home that's going to be just as bad as physical abuse. Everybody's on edge. Who knows what's going to tick him off. And he doesn't want to be that way, but he's that way. So I said, you're damaging your wife and your children. You're causing damage. You have to realize it's damage. It's not just, they'll get over it. So I said, you got to get yourself out of the house when you're like that. Go yell in the streets. Go yell at, go to a therapist and yell at the therapist. Or go punch, go to a gym and get, express your anger in a punching bag or something. Mm-hmm. I'm saying, so you have to see yourself and say, what energy am I exuding in my home? Is it positive energy or negative energy? You may not be able to answer that yourself. You may need to hear, because a lot of people, you ever meet somebody and you feel negative energy, you feel like, you think they know they're giving off negative energy. Nobody likes to believe that people don't want to meet me because I give off a negative energy, but there's some people that are unpleasant. They may not even be in control of it. They just grew up with a lot of unpleasantness. They may have had parents that were that way. They give that vibe. They give a very bad vibe. You go to a simcha, you feel it in the vibe. So you have to know what kind of energy you give off.
So Yiddishkeit
you seem to give off nice energy. But I don't know what's going on in your home,
But Yiddishkeit is the same. It's the same thing. If you show Lebedigkeit in...
Listen. A gesunter Mensch is a gesunter Mensch. If you're Chassidish, a gesunter Mensch, even better. But if you're not a gesunter Mensch, Chassidishkeit and Yiddishkeit is not going to save you.
Right, 100%.
Yeah. Midas Tevis, kindness. Right. Some people are so selfish and narcissistic. Everything's about me. Right. That's how they live their lives. That's how their homes are. That's the mind upon him. What do you think is going to come back?
Yeah, sure.
It's going to come back. That's the environment they create. That's what they'll get back. Now there are other people. Chassidus is supposed to aid Liyos, and the first step is really self-awareness. To know what are you giving off, and what can you make better, and what could you improve. In a simple atheist, a person who's Mekushas, connection to the Rebbe, it means the Rebbe's a mensch. A Rebbe's a mensch. Have to behave a certain way. Right. You have to be a mensch, You heard this this zettel, I heard it from Moshe Kotlarski. Maybe you heard it about the guy that there was no more Yechidus, so someone told me you should stand by Mincha as the Rebbe goes out and ask what he wants to ask the Rebbe. Well, when the Bochum got a hold of that, they blocked him, so he couldn't speak to the Rebbe. Okay. So then the advisor gave him, you should go to the Rebbe's house, 10 o'clock. The Rebbe would come to 770 for Monday and Thursday. And when the Rebbe comes out of the house, before he goes to the car, you could speak to him. So he did that. Now there were some Bochum standing on the side, for whatever reason. But he ended up speaking to the Rebbe, I think, for 8 to 10 minutes or something like that. Or 10 to 12 minutes, I remember. You all heard the story?
I just heard information.
Yeah. So,
Moshe was there?
Moshe Kotlarski.
Okay.
He
was there?
No. Here, anyway.
Yeah. So he spoke.
When the Rebbe went into the car, the Bochum ran over to this guy and they started yelling at him. The Rebbe's 1 minute. It took the Rebbe's 8 minutes, 10 minutes. And they mamish. So he wrote to the Rebbe, Mechila, that the Bochum yelled at him. He's sorry that he took the Rebbe's time. The Rebbe sent out a zettel to the Anhola of the yeshiva. They should tell the Bochum that yelled at this guy, 1, that 10 o'clock is the time of Zman Tefillin 770. What are they doing on President Street? And number 2, Bavada Yedua Lechem HaPizgim Shal Baal Shem Tov, that Aneshama Yorda Lamata, Las is Teva, V'chai Shivim Shmeinim Shana, to do a favor, a teva liyehudi. Umi yadeya im leila zeh yarden nishmasi, the Rebbe says.
Wow.
So this teva, this person. Lama heim evalbeli bezeh. My heim, how do they get mixed in? How do you say misarvim bezeh? Why are they getting mixing themselves? The Rebbe on himself. So what does that mean? It means that every person you meet, you have a refined attitude. This may be the person why your whole neshama came down. This is what a chassid thinks. You have maybe you're impatient, or you have some achzarius in you. Control yourself. You know the story of Shmuel Lu with hitting his children? He tells about it openly. He hit his children. He had uncontrollable anger. He wrote to the Rebbe. He can't stop himself. You know the Rebbe wrote them? Who? He tells it, so I'm saying it, but it's Shem Emri. He talks about Rabbim. The Rebbe wrote to him, or said to him, I don't know whether he wrote to him. On video, yeah. The Rebbe said to him, next time, you have to remember these are not your children, they're the Eibishter's children. And you have to know who you're hitting. You're hitting God's children. So you're dealing with Eibishter here. What does that mean? It's an attitude that's supposed to get you out of your own self and out of your own way.
I heard that in a more grubby way. Someone said, so when your kid brings over a friend for a play date, talk to your kid like the way you talk to your friends, to their friends.
Yeah, but you also don't do the good things for your friends' kids that you do for your own, so it's not as good of a metaphor.
In regard to, you wouldn't punish your kid with that.
It's I think extremely destructive when you see teachers, or you see people who are spouting Chassidus and Torah, and they seem to be all from this, and then they behave in an achzaristic way, in a cruel way.
Right.
To me, it's better not to have such a teacher than to have. You know the story of the Frierdiker Rebbe in the early years, the 40s. So when he came to America, he obviously was very much into chinuch.
Mm-hmm.
So two things he wanted to change. One was that they were learning Hebrew, the Torah, Jewish studies in the schools in the afternoon. In the morning, they learned secular. So he wanted to change around that. In the morning, number one priority is Hebrew, is the Jewish studies, Torah studies. He prevailed, by the way. You'll see it today.
Okay.
Second thing, the Frierdiker Rebbe wanted that people who are Machal Shabbos and not Shem Mitzvah should not teach children. So they argued, whatever, the Misrad HaChinuch or whatever it was in New York, they said, the Rebbe, ignorance is like a fire. Okay, when you put out a fire, who cares if it's clean water or dirty water?
Gasoline.
So even if it's teacher, that's a bad teacher, but at least he's teaching.
Oh, we said this was the much.
Frierdiker Rebbe said. So they told this to Frierdiker Rebbe. So Frierdiker Rebbe answered, that's as long as it's dirty water. What happens if it's kerosene or gasoline? What is the meaning? That when you teach a child to keep Shabbos and the child sees you don't, that's also a lesson. Right. You don't have to do what you see. So better not to teach them about Shabbos than to teach them and do the opposite. We had big problem. Growing up, that was a big thing. I remember we had teachers. Besides, they were irrelevant. Was the biggest issue. There were some cruel ones, but there was the irrelevant ones was maybe the worst. The only one I remember on my whole yeshiva life. Did anyone once ever talk about midas tevis? Bullying. Yelling, anger. It wasn't even it wasn't even on the topic. The only one I remember was Rabbi Ushbal. I don't know if you heard of Rabbi Ushbal. He was this edele, beautiful guy. He used to talk to us, I remember. He spoke very calmly. He used to always talk, you have to speak calmly. And I remember once after whatever, he was talking to me, he was holding my hand. Today you hold a hand ready, you get prosecuted. It was innocent. And he says to me, he looked at my nails, he says, says that. My father was always, nails were always clean, so I'm always had very clean nails. He says, so I said, why? She says, he said, Goy Kodesh, Mamleches Kain, and V'Gei Kodesh. So, and the point that he made was not the words, he meant it. He cared. So the only thing I remember, my whole chinuch, the only thing maybe, that's why all the tuition was just to hear that, to be clean. You understand? Obviously I had other experience. I'm just, that he was that way, he cared. Because they say, nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. Caring is a big one. Empathy, that you know somebody cares. And remember that. I remember he used to tell me clean. I was like rain. I always remembered it. And rain wasn't even talking heiche dagas and chassidus. Let's just start tara, maybe the dikdush, just be a clean, normal person. Like they say, Efshe zer amalach, vel a mensch is a zichenish. You know that one?
Same with children.
Children, for sure. Children, everything is emes. Children, you can't fool. You can say whatever you like. They don't learn from what you say. They learn from what you do. Children, they watch.
Do they
learn what you do?
Why was there no Seder Moser in the like Risha's talking about or things like that?
Because we have chassidus. Officially, chassidus was supposed to be that. But they never focused. It was never focused. You know, my Maimonim talk about Midas Davis. This one of the wedding Maimonim, Kolbanai, right? Yeah. Look when he talks about the Achzorius of a.
Farbrengen it's the one coming out of
Yeah, there's a lot of them there. I mean, you know.
But then it also becomes misinterpreted as a chelik of avodah. Or if it's understood as avodah, it's again part of the problem.
I think avodah is a dirty word for many people today. I really think it was presented in a very weird way. Look, to me, the havdil, you teach a person, let's say, a guy is a tennis player, and he's a good coach, and he kicks him in the butt, and he gets better and better. Mm-hmm. But you know, from good to excellent is going to require a real push. Because if you're good, you take it for granted, you're better than most, so what do you have to acquire? Then you start playing the top players, and you start losing, and you realize, oh boy. So it pushes you, you know. This type of, called a relentless pursuit for excellence, is not, we don't even have the concept in our yeshivas. Mediocrity is completely acceptable. Now again, there's some students obviously will be better than others, their talents and so on. But that idea, you know, and that's Aveda to me. Aved ibudetis. You're working yourself. You're going out of your regilas. The Alter Rebbe says, what's Eved Hashem, Eved Elikim, not Lo Yavod. In Perek Tezvav. It's simple English. You go out of your comfort zone and you're pushing yourself to go further. Where do you see this? So by us, the pushing is that you don't need this taiva, or you don't, don't think about yourself. It's not translated in a way that people can realize. What do you mean? This Aved is going get out of your comfort zone to get to a bigger place. Bittul is not destruction, annihilation. Bittul is losing your lesser self to get a bigger self. Not a bigger self, bigger ego. I mean a greater cause.
Bigotry of low expectations.
Bittul is bittul and nigla is the way we understand it in Chassidus. Like bittul chametz, biur chametz, it's based on destruction. Mevatel, be mevatel the ganze Zach. That's what bittul is in halacha, right? Bittul b'shishim. Chassidus bittul is the exact opposite. Bittul means you're learning your tziyur to get a higher, to connect to something greater, like the ayin be'emtza.
I think the menschlichkeit
completely misunderstood.
The menschlichkeit that you're speaking about, which is a necessary foundation for the possibility of any.
You talk about Brimwa. Well, you mentioned Brimwa. Without menschlichkeit, which person is going to respond to that type of bitush?
Well, I don't think a person is a mensch b'chlal at that age to be pushed b'chlal for high.
No, but I mean, if the person who's saying it, like it's a big thing who says it. When you have a coach, I said, who disciplines you, but it's coming from love, it's coming from care. The person is duragilum with bittul themselves, and they push you. It's very different. When someone's a piece of crap
get hurt by people
pushing
you believe care about you. People that you don't believe care about you can really hurt you.
Exactly.
You get hurt because you really believe it, because you buy into it. That's why you really get hurt. And so it's not because you doubt the sincerity of the mashpiyim; it's because you believe them. But
there are a lot of mashpiyim should go out of business.
Yeah, but the wisdom that is necessary for a person to become a mensch is a book in its own right, which is not very explicit in Chassidus. You have to find anecdotes of a story with it here and there. And we need to be learning it as a book.
In our
people go call the shofar or a therapist or whatever.
In our education,
don't have a language for it.
In our education systems, most of the teachers, there's some good, but most are not.
Because it's seen as being a failure. That's a part of it. It's not celebrated. So anyone who's talented or ambitious does other things. They're too busy.
The people that will change people's lives is a good teacher. If you have a good mentor when you're in your teens, you could change your life.
Not only that, it's like one good teacher can overcome many bad ones. So it's
Wasn't the parent child?
Did you have anyone like that?
I had, yeah. Actually, I don't know if you know David Levin in the Masifta here.
Oh, yeah, he's a cousin of mine.
He's a very good.
He's labeled grown as son, right?
He was a really good teacher. He was
good?
the class too. Very good.
He cares.
He really
caring is a big plus. To me, caring is more than competency.
He cares and he understands people. That's another thing. There's a lot of guys that care.
He's married to he's married to Lipscomb. Yeah, to my cousin. Yeah.
There's a lot of people care. They don't understand the nefesh of
people, his uncle, his grandfather.
Especially young.
He comes from the Levins. Yeah. From the Srol Nevler. You were in his class?
Yeah.
So he had a good effect on a lot of people then. That's excellent. What age does he teach?
He was
What? What age would be?
15, 14.
So that's a good year. Okay.
People's lives.
Are there others? We didn't have anybody. I thought in my years
they were good in certain ways.
We had a bunch of losers.
Shlomo Futterfass is a pretty good teacher.
We had a bunch of losers. They were refugees. They were busy. Narishkeit.
Oh yeah, it's a whole different. There was a big generational.
We had Amaratzim. I had a teacher that didn't know how to read Hebrew.
How did you become a teacher?
Forget about
he didn't teach.
Corporal punishment.
He would come and he'd say, "Boys, if you behave today, I'll read to you from Talks and Tales." He wanted to because he didn't read Hebrew,
right.
So he wanted to teach, but we didn't make. We made trouble. So he says, "Okay, we'll play hangman." You know the.
Yeah. How did he get the job? Because there was no one else.
How did he get the job? Because the guy that hired him was also incompetent. What do you mean?
What do you mean? He's one of the icons and saviors of.
You know the joke. The guy says, "What do you do for a living?" He says, "I work for my brother." What does your brother do? He's looking for a job. That's what we had. We had also. They were the refugees. They were the ones. They came after the war. They had no job. It was a ridiculous. It was a joke. He said, "Did I waste time?" I think back. There were years I didn't even know what Masechta was.
But don't you feel that in a certain way that everyone saw that happening? And just why was that let go?
It's a big question some people have. I have an answer. I have my answer to that. He couldn't intervene. It was like it would be too much hands-on to micromanage it. Because at the end of the day, it's not, you could be the great, but at the end of the day, it's as good as the teachers are. To micromanage that, you have to be on location. So the Rebbe, I think, bypassed it by creating his own so-called army and inspiring the Bochum when they came to the Rebbe. That's what it looked like to me. He almost like...
Regardless of where you're coming from.
Yeah. Look, the Rebbe does have thousands of soldiers out there, so he did something right. Despite the yeshiva system. And I think the Rebbe really wanted the yeshiva to be at least the environment. Because the environment, I have to say, the environment for sure gives us all, you say this, we certain muskolas shenis we have as a result. Even if the schooling itself is not, they're just standards. There's Farbrengens, the Rebbe. There's certain things that are givens. Remember, I see people who've taken the children out of Chabad schools, put them in other schools. The givens are lost. They don't have the Aleph base. For them, it's not a given that you have to make a dira b'tachtein or your futzman is chutz.
Even if the education is better, it's not.
Yeah, because you have tools, but you don't know what to use the tools for. Right. That's one thing. I told you, every child knows. You ask them, why are you here? To bring Mashiach or to make a dira b'tachtein. Right. You ask a regular from Jew to learn Torah and have Gan Eden or something.
They do very well in death camps, like Viktor Frankl explained. If they had nothing else, at least they'd have the idea.
Yeah, they're very good.
But in reality,
look, Esha Torah, by the way, in their manual for fundraising, they say if you have resistance to go fundraising, you should have a little mini crematorium on your desk.
Oh my God!
And just Miss Bain in it.
No.
That's the definition. I'll show you.
Yeah.
Wow. It means to get beyond the fear. You could have been a crematorium, so don't be scared meeting a gvir and asking for money. Crematorium. It means that they don't begin to. They think that's the dalif nemi ataim.
You know what the court.
The story with the chassid. There's a chassid he learned by the Litvaks. He was learned this, and finally he said to Rosh Hashiva, I think I've reached my max here. I'm missing something. So he says, where are you going to go? He says, I'm going to go to the chassidim. He goes to the guy, tries to dissuade him, the chassidim, whatever. He goes. He becomes a big chassid. He meets his Rosh Hashiva years later. Rosh Yeshiva says, so what happened? He says, I went and I found my neshama, I found myself. He says, what did you learn there you didn't learn here? So how do you explain it? So he says, I learned how to read minds. Read minds? Another Mishagas of L'chsim, they know how to read minds now? He said, yeah. He says, okay, read my mind. So he says, no, think about something important to you and I'll read your mind. So the Rosh Yeshiva says, so the Chassid says to him, you're thinking about Ein Eid Milvadeh. So he says, He says, that's why I left.
You know what the problem with the Lubavitcher system was? Very shocking.
You went to Detroit?
I'm joking. Wow. I'm making a joke.
That's the Detroit philosophy. They're trying to make a tikkun for their relative, the Rebbe's father, so the Rashag became the scapegoat. Yeah. It all goes down to psychological trauma that they experience.
But isn't it okay to make a joke, Rabbi Jacobson?
One second.
I love jokes. I think a joke is great.
Going back to the way...
but every joke has something...
a little bit of truth.
Do you think it makes sense to learn Rishus Chachma?
Rishus Chachma is not Musa. Rishus Chachma is brought in entirely. So Musa is Mesilas Yesharim. Musa is we learned Rishus Chachma through Chassidus. Rishus Chachma and a few others from like that, like Chavis Alavavis. But we learn it. Some people learn for the Chassan Rishus Chachma. Chavis Alavavis, the Rebbe says Shara.
On a younger level, I'm video that Rebbe sometimes tells. Through 8th grade, you don't learn any yeshiva. You learn any
Rishus Chachma Yerushalayim is.
I never learned Chassidus after.
I said no problem. Look, we don't learn a lot of things that we could be learning. We don't even learn most of my modern.
So, but in elementary school, you don't learn there's still no like Midas Tavis.
It usually comes in another.
But derech the yeshivas have their curriculum, but at some age, the goal is to learn more than what you just learned in school. You know, you read. That's how you pick up svarim and so on. I think absolutely. I've learned Rishus Chachma many times. Shalah, Rishus Chachma, the Alter Rebbe, Rishus Chachma, Shalah, Maral. These were the Sofrim Seifrim was those. Chavis Alavavis. More the Sefer Ikrim. There's a bunch of svarim. Rishus Chachma, some parts are very difficult. They're not all easy. There's the Yerushalayim ones about. Yeah.
Definitely the parts we've all learned are not very understandable.
So we all more refined? Okay, fine. It's a joke? Ellie went off already to Chicago?
Yeah. Shipped him right
Okay. Yaakov Halachal Darke.
He's coming back. He's coming back for the second days.
Yeah, Kaminig is well. Okay, so what's the Achlatas Tevis?
Don't get involved in the minutiae, you know.
Absolutely. I'll put it to you, sum it up this way. The Rebbe is important to us today for this reason. The Eibishter chose someone to come to this world 116 years ago to tell us why we came to this world. I think that's a pretty good thing to honor.
So how do you pick up on the methodology? Time spent learning the shufi?
I mean, you hear, for example, it's just like shimush.
Yeah.
It's the same idea. It's you have to, what they call today incubation. You got to incubate with people who are experts. Let's say you want to learn how to write. Right. You got to be around good writers. You have to let them critique what you're writing. Mm-hmm. You learn from them. I incubated when I did this without anyone inviting me, but I invited myself. When I started working in Sefer Lekutim Samach Tzadik, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Trust me. No one else did either. But that's why. You learn on the job. But you have to push yourself. You have to push yourself to really want to succeed.
How'd you end up by Chazar?
I liked the idea. I hung around with the by Chazara and I listened.
How do you get picked? Like, what made you say?
No one gets you picked. You pick yourself. Nobody picks you.
You should join the circle.
Meritocracy.
And then when I was in Morristown, I used to chazar in Morristown. Then the chazar used to come. I used to pipe in, help, and I became good at it. I was good at it. So then you naturally gravitate. Yeah. And as time passed, I became better and better. And then you write, you make mistakes, embarrassing mistakes, like all beginning, and then you get better.
How do you pass that on?
You have to have thick skin because most people don't like critique. Right. I remember a bocher who was excellent, and I was trying to train him into the chazara. And one Mitzvah Shabbos, all the arguments, what the Rebbe meant, and this, and he wrote something up, and he was criticized. The next morning, he said to me, "I don't have this. My ego is too fragile for this." Because he was from the best Talmidim. So when he was in a small fishbowl, he was the biggest fish. Mm-hmm. Now he suddenly came to another level with the big leagues. So in the minor leagues, he was. And I told him, "Don't be in spoil. That's how you become great." Right. He says, I cannot deal with being so. I felt he was humiliated. No one was humiliating him. It was the profession.
That's not like.
But growth. That's how growth comes. Some people don't. Some people would rather win right. than play the best players. Right. They want to play the people they can win. But then you're creating a threshold, a ceiling.
Used to be so. It didn't bother me at all.
I was going to tell a story before about something that happened to me. I remember I started writing Farbrengen's Lamites Mem, Tovshim Mem. And it wasn't easy in the beginning. I didn't have the experience, but I wanted to do it. And the beginning was murder. I remember times I thought I could never get through this. Now sometimes you just get to a point you feel I'm not. I remember sitting at night typing, and then there was no computer, so you type page 1, you roll it up in a ball in the garbage. Page 2. I had maybe a garbage can with 30 balls because I couldn't get through the first page. And it was 4 o'clock in the morning. I remember I was home. It was a bocha. My father was up. He was walking then. I said to my father, I can't do this. I took upon myself something I can't do. And it wasn't because I was ready to say that. So he said to me, the member, I'll never forget what he said because it's true till this day. He said, you keep at it. I don't care if you make another 100 balls. You keep doing it. Mm-hmm. You'll finally get through the first page. It's always going to be as difficult as it is now, even 30 years from now. Mm-hmm. The only difference is in 30 years from now, you'll know you could do it. And now you don't know. So it's like running a marathon. Right. The first time you run a marathon, if you ask people to run a marathon, you get to mile this and this. The end, your mamas don't feel you can do it. But you make it. And you push yourself. And experience, you ever hear, even in the World Series or big things, the experience beats talent. Because there's something that you have with experience that you've done it. And then the next time you run the marathon, it's still hard. You can't run 22-mile marathon. It's going to be difficult. You need a condition. If you don't condition. But once you did it, you know you could do it. And that's a big one. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. It's like the Rebbe would say about a march of Nitzachim. Even when you go to war. That's a trend. So being around people with confidence helps you build confidence. Look, think of an army again. You started as a soldier, but you're under a sergeant, and the sergeant's under a lieutenant, and et cetera, et cetera. What's happening? You're around people who have confidence. So you learn confidence from that, and you learn experience. There's no shortcuts, but you have to find excellence. Find people who are excellent at what you want to do, and hang around them. Just help them. Say if you use assistance. That's what I did. I remember by Sefer L'Kut, I used to go to Rabbi Yael. I used to bug him. He used to say to me, "How do we do this?" So he said to me, "You'll learn how I learned." So I said, "How?" Through making mistakes. He says the first time it gets printed, your things, the Erchim in Sefer L'Kutim it was, and you'll see mistakes on printed book, and you're going to feel miserable. You won't be able to sleep. Then you know you're getting somewhere. So I said, "That's what happened to you?" He says, "Yeah, that's what happened." He says the Rebbe wrote enough times I don't understand anything he's saying. So then I started. Then I got the same tzedlach. Remember in Tov Shemem, the first Farbrengen Miketz, the Rebbe wrote, "Kenida le tovsu kol ha'inyan." That's it. The Rebbe wrote that. So I took it. The Rebbe was brutal editor, by the way. The Rebbe was like that. He was brutal, but I learned tremendous from that. I'm telling you, the Rebbe was brutal. He would attack very strongly, not personal. Mavil, shocking, on things you don't even realize. The Rebbe was so like a scalpel. It took like a precision surgeon. Mm-hmm. And you make one little this, you'd get it over your head. I'll tell you things you wouldn't even. I'll give you an example. You would not believe. I remember this was Mem Zayin, and the Rebbe said from the story of Nachum Chernobyl that Amol B'Chsidim, the thing that you most resist, that's the thing you should do, because the Yetzer Hara doesn't want you to do it. So sometimes the thing you most don't want to do is the thing you should do. He told a story. So we wrote up the Sikha, and on the side the Rebbe writes Mavil, shocking. It's a story that everybody repeats, and we don't know any Ma'amar Chazal. But the Rebbe, it was shocking, we didn't realize it's a Ma'amar Chazal Mefurish. And then he wrote, what's the Ma'amar Chazal? Seina ve'eyev, seina kedem. It's a din, that if you have to help two people, you should help the one that is your enemy.
Right.
But the Rebbe, that's Ma'amar Chazal Mefurish, the story of Nachum Chernobyl, that when you think most resistance, that's what you do. But the Rebbe's Mavil meant that his standard was so high, so it forced you to think like that. This was common. Hundreds of things. I used to study the Rebbe's edits. You can't be lazy. You can't be overconfident and say, I already did it. Some people you just feel cocky. You feel, I'm good at it already. You have to always know you're not good at it. If you think you're too good at it, that's going to block you. You have to feel that you want to be better. And you hang around good people. You know the story that Volvo Green, Oliver Shalom told, that one of the first Kinnis HaShluchim.
The leaders.
The Volvo. Yeah.
Like the keynote address.
Yeah, he spoke. So he told about the paratroopers. You know the story?
Yeah.
Yeah. He told the story. He said there was a guy went to train to be a paratrooper. So first you train a month, you watch other people jump, and you help them, you pack them up, and blah, blah, blah. Comes his turn, he's all excited, they pack him up, he looks down, oh no, I'm not jumping. Okay, you need another month of training. Okay, this time he's all again excited, he's not jumping. So his sergeant tells him, you know what, it's not, you don't have the guts for this, go find another position in the military. It's not for you. He says, no, I want to be here. So why? He says, because I may never jump, but I like to be around people who jump. So Velvet Green said, I may never be a shliach, but I like to be around shluchim. I'm telling you, it's not, so you don't have to recreate the wheel. Go anywhere in life. You go in financial firms, in law firms. Mm-hmm. You come in, you could be genius. You could have the highest marks, but you don't have experience. Right. And you hang around with the people with experience, and you learn the ropes. And you see how they solve a problem, how they deal with things. And you are open to growing and open to learning. That's how you become great. I always tell the shluchim, for example, new shluchim go out as shlichus. There are some very good shluchim to talk to, because they were there. They'll tell you the fears that you'll have in the beginning, the challenges, and how you grow. So you're not going to learn overnight, but there's nothing wrong. It's the common sense. You call up somebody. Let's say, I remember the first time we developed a website in the Meaningful Life Center. You don't know what we were doing. So you make all the mistakes, and you waste money, and pay this and other. Then you figure out the code. You figure it out. Mm-hmm. That you need to have a wireframe, and then you need design, and then you need programming. I remember someone telling us, don't just programming, you need programming that knows design. Because the programmer can mess up the design. It's like a fourth step. So sometimes you speak to someone that has years of experience, and in 2 minutes, but many of us think we're smarter than they. So you know what, I'm going to cut corners. And then I remember when I was working on Torah Meaning for Life, I was working with excellent the publishers, top people in this country. It was such a pleasure. Because I was good at what I do, but I was not good at other things. But Lubavitch would teach us you're good at everything. And for example, someone said to me, how many hours did it take you to the design of the cover? I said, it didn't take me anything. He called me up and I said, good, invite them. By us, an asifa, maybe it should be a little more beige. And why I have the candle, maybe it should be a talus. You know what I'm saying? By me, as long as it didn't repulse me, you're the designer, I trust you, weiter gegangen. You have to know. I always am amazed.
Stay in your lane.
Exactly. You ever see the end of a movie? How many credits are there? Hundreds.
Yeah.
You say, how did they pull that off? That the egos didn't get in the way. So they say, Taka, for every film that comes out, 100 don't come out because they can't get along. But because it's always that way. Coexistence. If you're good at what you know you're good at what you are, and I'm good at what I am, we can coexist. If you don't think you're so good, you think, you know what? Maybe I'm taking away something from you. It really comes down to what the Kutzke Rebbe said. If I am I because you are you, you know that one? and you are you because I am I won't be and you won't be. But if I am I because I am I, and you are you because you are you. A lot of it, insecurity to me is the root of a lot of problems. People are insecure, so they see somebody else and they get a little jealous and they want that. And then you have, and they're not going to say they're jealous, so they make believe that they're not, and then you have...
everybody deep down is insecure.
Working with people, everybody has insecurities, but it doesn't mean you have to be insecure. Look, as I said to you, I remember when I began my career, so to speak. I was secure as a person, but I wasn't secure I know how to do this. The first thing I knew, maybe I don't know how to do it, but I want to learn how to do it. It would be like someone, I'm already a master. I know I wasn't a master at 20 years old, but I want to become. So you learn from those.
How do you teach your kids to be
right? That's the thing. If this is all talking about you want something,
very hard. If you're insecure, it's very hard to teach someone to be secure.
I think I'm very insecure, but I'm still insecure about certain things.
No, we're all insecure about certain things. You know what? If I have to call somebody for money, trust me, I suddenly become very insecure. Because it's very hard. I always say to myself, why am I calling him? You should be calling me.
No, I'll tell you.
But the thing is, we're all talking about things
that's
we're
life.
interested in.
But that's gemacht. You got to ask. You got to humiliate yourself sometimes.
Right before Perm, so we have...
We're all insecure. One second. You know how to do everything? If you know how to do something, you bring someone else who knows how to do it.
Right.
Insecure people, by the way, secure people doesn't mean they know how to do everything. Secure people are the first people to ask someone to help them.
Right.
Insecure people have difficulty asking.
I'm talking about getting your children.
Men are
getting your
not so
children
secure,
to want the things that you want.
We don't ask directions. We don't ask the answer.
Yeah.
But here we're talking about things that
men
we
are like
want.
computers. They're full of data, but they're clueless.
If we want things, there's
that's the joke of that.
Things that we're trying to get toward. If we're trying to give that to our children, if they don't know
the best way to give children security is, first of all, for you yourself to behave securely and
living by example.
By example, yes.
Right.
Secondly, to not be afraid with experimenting, not telling children you must do it this way.
Right.
Let them use their imagination.
Right.
There's nothing more reassuring and validating when a child does something.
Right.
Be very careful not to criticize them. Okay. Like, there's fathers and mothers that criticize all the time. No, you should have done it this way. You should have told them this.
Right.
Instead of validating. Let's say your child did something that you thought should have been done differently. Instead of saying you should have done it, let them say it. They say that was very good. And throw in a suggestion maybe. You have to always validate the person. This is by the way adults too, but children. Right. You invalidate children too many times, you basically you're stripping them from their secure confidence. Because critique, that's what it does.
Right.
Now, constructive critique, you have to know how to say it in a loving way. But there are parents that constantly undermine their own children, to be very honest. They do. Either because they themselves are not secure with themselves, so they undermine.
Right.
And they're critical. I just read a few weeks ago a heart-wrenching letter. I spoke about, somebody asked me a question Sunday night in my life. I replied, the question was, do I need to invite my father to my children's chuppah? Because he was abusive to me, and I don't want him around.
Right.
So it was kibbutz. That was the question. So I spoke about it. The crux, if it's going to be destructive to you, you don't have to. Kibbutz is not destructive.
Right.
Kibbutz also can't go against God. It's about whatever. You have to know how to. There's different.
Okay.
So I can't tell you. Maybe over 60 emails I received.
Wow.
You can't imagine how freeing I feel after you spoke, because you validated. The guy writes to me that he broke the silence. 20 years married, he never told his wife how much his father would abuse him. No, verbal. Shabbos.
Yeah.
Shabbos by him is a dreadful day, because the Shabbos was the day his father would fire him every Friday night and literally yell at him. You imbecile, you idiot.
Wow. And that's from that.
So his whole life, Shabbos is the worst day of his life. He says he remembers when it came Thursday, his heart was Thursday. Like a child.
Yeah.
A child doesn't know. If you're ready expecting that, a child gets scared from it. You have nowhere to run. Your father comes Friday night, should be a beautiful experience, instead it becomes dreadful. I read the letter. It's heart-wrenching. Mamish makes you cry. How parents can hurt their children. I'm sure I don't know who this is because I don't know their name.
Okay.
I'm sure you meet the father. He may seem like a good guy, maybe even be a Chassidish guy, but he doesn't realize what he's doing. He thinks he's like, motivating. Instead, he's
They're
destroying.
more likely to be chassidish.
Huh?
I think people justify their pathologies, like you said before. That religious people.
I'm saying in a positive way, it works the same way. If you live that
validation, like to tell a child you're a baby,
right?
You're stupid. What do you mean? A child comes home, they make a little arts and crafts, even if it's not a shkite.
Yeah.
You compliment them.
Right.
It's not your standard, it's your child's standard.
Right.
It's a constant look. Flowers need water to grow.
Yeah.
Children need love to grow.
Sure.
Simple as that, and that's it. And there's never enough.
Yeah.
You can always give more.
What do you think about
Simas Lev? It's caring, going out of the way. Validation is very, very big.
So they grow caring. How do you get them to grow caring the same thing that you?
No,
want
by
them to care
definition,
about?
children will have confidence. You don't need to give them confidence.
Right.
You just
They
need to make
have
sure
it.
they don't have the
Nurture
opposite.
that.
Yeah, you give them validation, the confidence comes naturally.
And
it's the opposite. You destroy their confidence by constant critique. You see a child that's second guessing himself or herself is because their parents second guessed them, never trusted them. No, you shouldn't do it this way. Do it this way. So you start saying, you know what? Maybe they're right.
Yeah.
So every decision they make, start thinking back and forth, back and. These are things that could be corrected. The earlier, the more important. The earlier, the better.
So the more positive reinforcement, the more likely they are to share the same values that you show in that positive reinforcement.
Yes, listen. The more confident they are, the more healthy they are, the more likely they're going to embrace what you taught them.
Right.
If you create a very unhealthy environment, why should they want to embrace?
Right.
You think they're rejecting the Judaism? They're rejecting what you
the
Judaism.
pushing,
The Judaism that was presented to them. It became toxic.
Right.
I know
the positive reinforces.
Absolutely. There's no guarantee. You always need God's mazel. You always need mazel and God's blessings. But we're talking about making a keli, exactly.
Right.
Again, like I said before, kamayim upon him.
You
can't expect sitting Friday night and you're sour and bitter and angry, and your children are going to grow up and say, "Oh, I love Friday night."
Right.
It's not going to happen.
Right.
That's not going to happen. They will have a bad experience.
How do you feel about?
My father never once touched me. I'm like a pachi.
Mm-hmm.
My mother maybe a few times, but my father never. I never touched my children. Now you could say some people say you have to.
Yeah.
I don't know. And today the Rebbe anyway says you don't need to do that. But it's like to me, I look back and I think that was one of the healthiest things. They never saw me. I'm sure I got angry once in a while, but it was never out of control. Because I grew up like that. I grew up in an environment that that's not how you solve problems.
Right.
And some people grow up with a lot of rage,
right,
and a lot of anger, and a lot of yelling, and a lot of other things. It has to. Children need a peaceful zone. They can't have a war zone.
Yeah.
And how parents talk to each other. Everything matters. Everything counts. Don't ever think also that your children don't see. They see everything. They feel everything. There's a guy. A lot of stories like this. He's doing things he shouldn't be doing outside of his marriage. Let's put it this way. And he says to me, I said, "You don't think it causes your home? You don't bring the toxins into your home?" He says, "Nobody knows."
Everyone knows.
I said, "It's not about. You're sitting at the dinner table with your wife and your children. I don't care if no one knows, but your heart is not there 100%.
They feel it.
So I'm not saying they'll ever know, but don't tell me that it's a healthy, because where your thoughts are and where your feelings are, people." And they may never know. Doesn't mean knowing is not the key here. It's that it's who you are.
Right. Ever held a baby when it's crying? The baby can feel when you're not with you.
Yeah.
It feels right away.
100%. And children itself, you see children right away get scared of certain people.
Yeah.
They
I
remember when we were kids. I'm not going to say names, but there was some gaboyim in 770. The kids were that petrified from it, because they were like angry. They hated children.
What do you do when your kids are scared?
And then I found out what they did to their own children. They beat. They hate. Some people hate children.
You can tell.
I remember we'd go on the bimah to get the bags for candies,
right,
and there was some guy. Like it wasn't just yelling. He would look at you like with hatred.
Right.
Hatred and command upon the palm can't live on exactly, 100%.
Protect your kids.
What about in terms of? I think a lot of people want their kids to have better life than themselves, and they want their kids to have better standards than themselves, right?
Right.
The question is how do you balance kind of not doing too much performing for your children kind of being honest about your own deficiencies, but still presenting them an ideal. Because I think they realize when you're performing, and they don't like that.
It just depends on the age. In the older age, you could talk about it. You could sometimes, teenagers already.
Yeah.
Younger age, I don't think it's appropriate to tell them, by the way, I'm not perfect. I want you to be better than,
Right.
I really think it comes down to showing a sincere support for the child, what the child is growing into. I don't think at that point you could tell the child, be better than I was. Because first of all, the child's not grown up yet, so we don't know where the child's going. I just think it's supporting them, supporting their interests and their inclinations. That's what I think. And where it goes, it goes. Look, it's going to be very hard for you to, as your children see you watching television all day and expecting they're not going to watch television. That's not going to happen. But I'm just, using just as a grub example. But I had an interesting story. I was once by the oil. I was speaking the campus, the week on the Chabad on campus.
Mm-hmm.
So I was speaking for the students. There are two groups going to the oil. Prepare them to go into the oil.
Yeah.
So I meet a shliach. He was in California. Very good shliach. He's a very good guy. I like him. Tells me interesting. He says, none of my children went on shlichus. What you said, So I said, he says, it always bothered me because me and my wife were really dedicated. We love our shlichus. So my son went into business. I decided I'm going to have a conversation with him. Not because I'm judging him. I just want to know. That's all he saw. So I asked him, you grew up in this home. Why did you have no interest in going with shlichus? So he told me two things. He says, first of all, yes, there's no question that you and mommy, love the shlichus and this. But every night you come home, you complain how difficult it is. Chavis, this. So I heard complaints all day. That's what the impression was. Though I know that you would. The second thing, this would blow him away. He says, as much as you loved your shlichus, I never saw you jump with excitement as much as when you saw a touchdown by the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Yes, he said to me, the truth is, my shlichus is much more important than the game. But he's right. I never jumped because of the shlichus. I jumped the touchdown was more. He says that. So I said, so I picked up something. I jump at touchdown.
The old story of two brothers, all owned a businessman, and the businessman would come home and learn.
Proper chinuch is going to business and you complain about it all day.
Would come home 1 hour and read the paper.
Right? Because that's the thing with the kids is that at the end of the day you can't lie to them. They see who you really are and they see where your heart really is.
100%.
So maybe the best thing to be, even at a somewhat younger age, is to be honest and have integrity, than try to perform who you want to be.
Well, I'll tell you something.
For them.
I personally think that the shlichus model, let's say, in my case, I had Shabbosim always guests, not every week, but studying. My children always saw classes in my house.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a major impact on them. Because that was reality. It was really what I did. I didn't do it for show.
Mm-hmm.
And I see it had a very strong... I didn't do it because of them, but I happened to do it in my house. And I see my children picked up from that. It's not even what they do. It's not like they do it exactly, but they have a certain love for that. For learning and for... They so svarim, there's no question they pick up. So I would say, even if you're not mamish on a shlichus, you should have in your home, definitely every few weeks, some guests. You talk about Yiddishkeit, not just about business and Narishkeit.
Right.
Just on a very osmosis level, not because of your children, just have that. These things make the Shabbos table alive. Because if it's not alive, they grow up and say it's a boring, so Shabbos becomes boring. Create that environment. Have a shir in your house once a month, even more often. How the husband and wife even talk about the Rebbe and other things. Definitely never machlekes in the house. Osir and mamish. Doesn't matter how passionate you are. No politics, nothing. Not mishachis, not anti, nothing. These things are complete poison.
Why didn't know people still spoke about this?
Yeah. Come home and these things are, you have to create that environment. And the more the giving, having a share, people coming, talking, see the Yiddishkeit lives. That is now kamuva with shluchim. You have to not overdo it where you forget about your children.
Right.
There's a time the guests they go home. And your children have to be the center. And you invite them into the discussion. So I remember my son and daughter used to sit Friday nights, and we used to have people would argue and discuss, and they would sometimes participate, sometimes they didn't, but they were. Those things are impossible to those like winners. The winning formula. That's what it is.
I'm sure you felt like you took a risk with that, because I'm sure when your kids got the Charlotte from Sifta, they asked the mashpia a question, and there was a wall. Or whatever, it wasn't a pleasant experience.
Yeah, because
if you're open with them, they won't handle the closed-mindedness in the culture.
They came out pretty unscathed. They came out of it.
You grew up in shlichus. You get this.
My daughter's a very disruptive type, meaning in a good way. She's anti. She's like, she's a nonconformist, and she's very sharp. So she saw through her teachers and all that in seminary. Mm-hmm. But I remember I told her, I said, listen, while you're in school, you got to follow the rules. You get out of school, then you do what you want. But so she had some struggles with this, because she saw also mediocrity. She told me he's an idiot, and she was right. She happened to be right. I didn't agree with her. I didn't say anything. I don't think it's good for a parent to, because I said, but this is the structure you're in. Learn to maneuver through it, and then that for sure. You cannot feed your children's rebellion against it all, even if you really feel that way. Because at the end of the day, that's also coping. They have to learn how to cope with a structure that may not always be. But that's also a lesson in life. Let's say you're in a place and it's not so easy, but so you learn from that. I remember it was a whole thing. My daughter went. She was in seminary. They were ready. In Tzfas, one of the Tzfas seminaries. Well, my daughter was like, she didn't make trouble, but she's the head of the yeshiva knew. In the school of someone that she didn't respect him. He knew that, and he wanted her respect. So the last week, they all left like Friday early or something. Just interesting. So it was time for revenge. You're thrown out for a week. They called us. My daughter was already 18 years old, 17 years old. So I said to the guy, I said to him and his wife, I said, so 1 second, I'm not defending my daughter. I understand she broke the rule. But let me ask you, this is the last week of school. We're showing an example for what? For the first week, I understand. Right. What's the last week? Who are you showing? They're leaving after this, back to New York. And my daughter didn't give a crap, to be honest. I needed to call somebody that she should be under the auspices. So I called Yossi Reichik in Kfar Chabad. So he tells me, tell her to take an enjoyable day on the beach in Tel Aviv, and I'll say she worked in soccer that day. She tells me. So I told my daughter, I said, just don't tell her. So she went to the beach. So I remember, the seminary, they were calling, I don't know why they were calling me, I didn't want to be involved. Yeah. So I said to them, I don't understand you. The last week, and you didn't throw out the girl whose father is wealthy. She also cut. Yeah. So everyone's talking about it. That you threw out only the ones that you can get even with. I'm just mentioning it was it was not even disturbing. So then I told them, I said, look, it's true, I don't have money. But I tell you, my daughter's going to be one day a leader in Lubavitch. I think you don't want to be in her bad side. I just needed to tell them that. So they right away said, okay, we'll have her come back the next day after Shabbos. This is when you have insecure and holofish taste. Unfortunately, by the way, some insecure mashpiyim cause a lot of damage. They think they're the big mashpiyim.
They project.
Well, a large part of us with the mashpia game is this constant, need for attention in some way, which usually doesn't come out of a place
of security.
Control. There's so many mashpiyim that are just, constantly just trying to.
Yeah, we all have names to fill in the blanks.
It's an exhibition.
All mashpiyim I've dealt with are always very.
And that's why there are some mashpiyim that like to take their pants down when they have a lot to drink. It's an extension of the exhibition.
There are mashpiyim like that? Should.
It's a certain archetype. Well, there was a guy that used to come to yeshiva all the time.
The only mashpiyim I ever dealt with were always very genuine people.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, he makes him crazy. Till his hands are bleeding.
But at the end, when they finally get.
That's good. Yeah.
You can drive a person to overcome.
You're reminding me about that,
Yeah,
but that guy's Achzes. That's no question. He's like.
He reminded me of Yisrael a little bit.
Yeah.
An Achzer, but he cared about learning. Like he didn't care about you. If you're ready to play his game, he's going. It's
called.
Whiplash.
Whiplash.
But the difference is that if the overcoming is about like getting good at something, it's not great. But if the overcoming is about like becoming something of value,